ODD TV, Payday Monsanto. Let's get it, homie.
They live, we sleep. The alarm's going off, beep, beep. Time to wake up to the deceit. Our whole reality's made up by the elite. They live, we sleep. The alarm's going off, beep, beep. Time to wake up to the deceit. Our whole reality's made up by the elite.
They live, we sleep. The alarm's going off, beep, beep. Time to wake up to the deceit. Our whole reality's made up by the elite. They live, we sleep. The alarm's going off, beep, beep. Time to wake up to the deceit. Our whole reality's made up by the elite. I came here to kick some ass just like Roddy Piper. These motherfuckers that walk among us, they got me hyper. But don't be chewing that bubble gum, it's got aspartame. It's a chemical directly targeted at your brain, just like the fluoride that they put in the water supply, and all the geoengineering we got in the sky. I'm trying to tell you, and I hope that you're hearing me clearly. This ain't no bullshit speculation, conspiracy theory. They live and they're controlling every move you make, from the apartment that you live in to the juice you drink. They give you television to help you ignore this prison, while feeding you genetically modified organisms. They want us like the Walking Dead, just obey and consume. Don't worry about anything, keep awaiting your doom. To all my warriors out there, this is indeed my call. It's time to put a fucking end to this elite cabal. They live, we sleep. The alarm's going off, beep, beep. Time to wake up to the deceit. Our whole reality's made up by the elite. They live, we sleep. The alarm's going off, beep, beep. Time to wake up to the deceit. Our whole reality's made up by the elite.
When they try to prove their spinning ball Earth, it's remarkable. All their arguments are absolutely fucking farcical. It's clearly been shown your problems aren't resolvable. Your theory has been blown into tiny little particles. The pharmacological drugs they got the masses on precludes them from putting their rowdy Roddy Piper glasses on. And even when they do, they're unable to gaze too straight, cause for most of them it's way too late for them to see past their conditioning. They will not be listening to anything outside their paradigm imprisonment. They are ensconced in a nonsensical certitude, brainwashed by devils to revel in their servitude. It's idiocracy, pure hypocrisy. Waking these dummies up, it used to mean a lot to me, but nowadays I wanna tip their canoes, and as they drown, tell them this is what you get when you snooze.
They live, we sleep. The alarm's going off, beep, beep. Time to wake up to the deceit. Our whole reality's made up by the elite. They live, we sleep. The alarm's going off, beep, beep. Time to wake up to the deceit. Our whole reality's made up by the elite.
Either put on these glasses or start eating that trash can.
Free from their debts, no longer will we allow them to control our lives and poison our planet with their greed and corruption. Manipulating us, pulling our strings behind the scenes, as they built their criminal empire on the back of hard-working people like each of you. They seduced us with advertisements for a life we could never afford, poisoned our bodies with junk food, and distracted our minds with pointless entertainment, all the while happily lending us money to push us further into their debt.
Yeah. I can guarantee you that when I die, there ain't gonna be a clone. I'm the only real one when I'm in the zone. I know they wanna catch me when I'm all alone, and I'm cool with that. I'm used to having to hold my own. Yeah, the skills and the rhymes and the raps are built for combat. I'm here to take the children's minds back from the television and the villainous mind traps and the criminals and the military complex. Yeah, cause the TV got a mouth on it. So watch your kids when they get hit from the sound from it. And the internet when they playing around on it. The technology is how they are surrounding us. Cybernetic tentacles, metal flesh, metallic tendrils, subliminal sexual messages sent through your mentals, experimental test tubes and genetic vessels. Yeah, they're looking down upon us from the minors. They want us traumatized from the drama. We not gon' stop, we ride like marauders. It's hard to find us, we camouflage in the collage of mirages. Robotic armored guards that come to bomb us. This goes beyond anonymous and as large as goddess. We've got piranhas in our waters. Look at the corporate folk, they slide a bill under your nose without snorting coke. You think your shit won't sink because you float your votes? Well, bye-bye, motherfucker, row your boat. Yeah. Now when you listen, these psychopaths want us to bow when they sin. I'm loud when I'm spitting, my mouth is a weapon. So when I bust rounds, go down when I'm ripping. I ain't a killer, but I murder the mainstream. Murder the mainstream. I ain't a killer, but I murder the mainstream. Murder the mainstream. I ain't a killer, but I murder the mainstream. Murder the mainstream. I ain't a killer, but I murder the mainstream. Murder the mainstream. The second he's stabbing, we rapping the Second Amendment. The weapons are kept for defense and protection. They send to these devils, these federal henchmen are getting aggressive. They just wanna stress us, so that when we flip out, they can come and get us. And they make us get down, so they put on pressure. And they wanna test and measure our threshold. They don't want us to get loud, it's another risk now. But we've learned to chance it. This shit is too real, so fuck the circumstances. Motherfuckers wanna come and murk your families. Who give a damn till your blood is squirt on canvas? Don't trust the news for answers. Your loved ones getting crushed and hurt and damaged. The motherfuckers still jump in front of cameras. Busting guts, catch a mustard, murder sandwich. Cause if you white, you a problem. And if you black, you a target. And if you rap, you a monster. And if you speaking the facts, motherfuckers come catch you, you a martyr. In this game of chess, see there's rules. Look at the board, see the chess pieces move. Before they figure out what chess piece they use, you gotta figure out what chess piece are you. So don't be fooled by the mind control from Zionists generated by these cartels. They don't wanna separate us, they just wanna manipulate us into separating ourselves. It's a dark spell, and it can't be unspoken, it must be broken. All this gun control and all these puppet shows, man, I ain't trusting no one. Better duck, it comes another explosion. I ain't a killer, but I murder the mainstream. Murder the mainstream. I ain't a killer, but I murder the mainstream. Murder the mainstream. I ain't a killer, but I murder the mainstream. Murder the mainstream. I ain't a killer, but I murder the mainstream. Murder the mainstream. And this may be irrelevant to you, but even the most intelligent of Jews will address the elephant that's in a room. Cause how much can a pelican consume? So your Jew isn't a Zionist, but a Zionist could be a Jew. You see, they like to fuse the ideas of the two to confuse you and the minds of the Jews, so they fight for these ghouls. You should know by now I'm talking about the Rothschilders, and they're using Israel as a Rottweiler. These killers are cold, man, like some crocodile blood. They don't really give a damn or a fuck about us. Look at the guys that strip, they popping clips, taking shots at kids, dropping bombs and shit on a populace with rocks and sticks. They locked in the grid, looking like a Nazi pit. From Al-Qaeda to ISIS, who you think's creating them, training them and paying them? You better check the nation that you stationed in, who sees making favors and see who donates to them. It's a big game, ain't it? Matter of fact, it's a big shame, ain't it? It's a situation they don't want to have to play with, even when a kid is getting decapitated. Peace to Syria, the Middle East, American bloodbath has reached hysteria. We reached the barrier, we must act while the freedom of speech is still hearing us, and the media just keeps burying up facts. Over and over again, we've seen it before and we heard it's the same thing. That's why I say fuck this system, and let's murder the mainstream. I ain't a killer, but I murder the mainstream. Murder the mainstream. I ain't a killer, but I murder the mainstream. Murder the mainstream. I ain't a killer, but I murder the mainstream. Murder the mainstream. I ain't a killer, but I murder the mainstream. Murder the mainstream.
We are rapidly approaching a moment of truth, both for ourselves as human beings and for the life of our nation. Now, truth is not always a pleasant thing. But it is necessary now to make a choice, to choose between two admittedly regrettable, but nevertheless distinguishable post-war environments. One where you got 20 million people killed, and the other where you got 150 million people killed. Mr. President, I'm not saying we wouldn't get our hair mussed, but I do say no more than 10 to 20 million killed, tops.
We got the populace brainwashed, all in the state of shock. We got the military-industrial complex moves wide over your block. And if you happen to become aware, we don't particularly care. Cause we got the neutron bombs that instantly suck the oxygen right out of your air.
Chico, you better reassess the situation. The plans are in order to restructure the population 80% at least. I hope you're paying attention to the beast who plan on enslaving you under the guise of peace.
That word takes on new meaning. It don't mean what you're thinking.
It means full spectrum dominance for real, and you won't be born unless you have a function to fulfill. A scientific dictatorship's more efficient, cause we ain't gotta waste effort to entertain your pathetic bitches. We just stick a chip in you, immerse yourself, so you'll be able to Google Earth yourself.
Real time with no computer. We will make humans super.
It's the ultimate Trojan horse. Once you marry the beast, there ain't no divorce.
We got the populace brainwashed, all in a state of shock. We got the military-industrial complex goons squad all in your block. And if you happen to become aware, we don't particularly care. Cause we got the neutron bombs that instantly suck the oxygen right out of your air.
There's a war going on, hidden in plain view. It's mass murder, 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 and it's aimed at you. They preparing for mass casualties, wild but true. Doomsday seeds owned by Rothschild and crew. So when the manufacturing famine happen and they start to ration off rice at unreasonable prices, the people start to smash and grab it. Monsanto conveniently step in to save the day. Organic seeds I take away, for GMO I make you pay. My actions are equivalent to raping nuns. I'm training foreign troops out to take your guns. We don't suffer from PTSD, we give it away for free. War is ugly, we make it fun. Line up accordingly for your shot. Your vaccine's mandatory, you don't wanna get popped. We gotta set a precedent, accordingly you'll be shot. Although it's not a law, we keep you in awe with a Glock pointed at you. Cause
we got the populace brainwashed, all in a state of shock. We got the military-industrial complex moon squad all on your block. And if you happen to become aware, we don't particularly care. Cause we got the neutron bombs that instantly suck the oxygen right out of your air.
Many of us were told in private conversations that if we voted against this bill on Monday, there would be martial law in America.
Walking down the street around 9 p.m. is about the time where you might see them. If you take a little peep through the windows of a house, you'll see lazy, lifeless beings steady laying on the couch. They seem to be in some kind of hypnotic dream, emotionlessly staring at a television screen. Or did you even notice we're conversating with the homies that all it takes is only the unbutton of a Sony, and all attention is diverted, the conversation ends, preventing you from having a real discussion with your friends. If this sounds familiar or somewhat recognizable, you might have been subjected to the Pentagon's mind control. The set you own is fitted with a certain flicker rate. This is done to put you in a trans-hypnotic state. The most receptive brain parts start to activate. Without you even knowing it, your mind is getting raped. Your brain is now receptive to subliminal suggestion, ingesting without question all the mental regression. Unaware of it, the flashes hit you like repetitive. The TV hypnotist is like a psychotherapist, while not reacting physically to the action that is shown, suppressing all emotion, so now your brain is prone to attention disorders lately kids are swimming in, while you're quick to give your kids some frickin' Ritalin. Except for mindless entertainment, nothing's really on. The news you hear is pre-selected and all agreed upon to be chewed up and spitted out in your living rooms by the owners of conglomerates or media tycoons. Behind the scenes, it's really families like these who are secretly entangled to the weapons industries. Turner, Murdoch, Redstone, Disney, NGE are in control of nearly every media you see. Do you know the Rothschilds bought up Reuters and AP, which turned out to be the biggest news agencies? It's called the fourth branch of their own family tree. The other branch of profit from the war in the Middle East. That's why they mold your mind with words like Muslim terrorists. Their programming is repetitive, the pulp works like a sedative. Yet fear and war are not the only things they sell. Is made to distract you from reality as well. I'm telling all the people that they better read and listen. Wake up from the zombie mode, the telescreen is given. It's giving the empty vision to men, teens and women. Got you buying shit you don't really need for living. Consumers buying, nearly dying, trying to flee the system. Not overstanding that they're not free but imprisoned, namely by greed and indeed materialism. Voting for which puppet will be next on television, while possessed by possessions, swagger, shine and fashion. They are unable to question the fascist progression. All people ever talk about what's on the night before. Sleep, work, and consume and watch the game some more. There are places you could go to watch your favorite show, where sports and movies are all instantly available on the World Wide Web, so you can also get the news from all points of view, so you won't get confused. You see the little red button on your remote control. It could free your soul like going down the rabbit hole. You don't want your state of mind to become the mind of state, so you better turn the TV off before it is too late. Be free to free your mind and take a look outside. Rally up the people, cause it's time to organize. Stand up, do something, revolution in the air. Throw up your guns and rush them like you just don't care.
ADM with the OTR, jabber on and away from the law. You Inspector Gadget and they the Dr. Claw, trying to get the penny in the brain and all. VPN on the offshore islands, and they make every effort to silence. They fear what they don't understand, and they can't control, but they can't put a cork on your soul. Man, they make it harder to trust. They can turn a close homie in the federal bus. They can flip a little switch and have him sniffing the cuts, and you're sitting in the van with your wrists in the cuffs. You can take the precautions, guard your identity like proof of the Martians, but the odds that you're getting betrayed logarithmically increase with the passing of days. It's another worldly fuck. Your life change when they're kicking a dope. Ain't nothing been the same and you're fighting this love, but you don't cave to the game, give a fade or blow. Just another worldly fuck. Your life change when they're kicking a dope. Ain't nothing been the same and you're fighting this love, but you don't cave to the game, give a fade or blow. Chain as long as the weakest link. One leak in the whole boat sink. That's why you gotta keep it on like Mr. Pink, or the reservoir swallow you up in one drink. Now I didn't write the rules, but the game ain't changed since I was hacking my schools. I'd have made the same mistakes in pursuit of the truth. Tried to hold the fam together like a Michael Bluth. Instead I'm Joe, $90,000 suit in the courtroom telling judges how they don't recruit the proper talent to compute. We just punish and dilute all the spirit in our youth to compete global. Tell our kids that whistleblowing isn't noble, unless you're snitching on the hack of propaganda gobles. Give them life just for hacking into mobiles and raise incarceration totals. Shit. It's another worldly fuck. Your life change when they're kicking a dope. Ain't nothing been the same and your faith is low, but you don't cave to the game, give a fade or blow. Just another worldly fuck. Your life change when they're kicking a dope. Ain't nothing been the same and your faith is low, but you don't cave to the game, give a fade or blow.
He's known as the electronic Robin Hood. He's a 28-year-old man. He's currently in federal prison here in New York. His name is Jeremy Hammond. Now, if that name isn't familiar to people, it ought to be. In my view, this Jeremy Hammond is a very important whistleblower and should be a hero to many.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street, and there's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know the air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value.
I hereby declare this to be an unlawful assembly. I order all those assembled to immediately disperse. You may be arrested and/or subject to other police. The use of riot control agents, which could cause risk of injury to those who remain.
Yo.
All right, guys, and we are live for episode 57 of Anonymous Bites Back. We have a very special guest today. We have Barrett Brown with us. And so we'll go around and introduce ourselves. I'm Edward.
Troy, man.
Tyler.
Preston from Texas.
Fellow in the hoodie. What's up, guys? I'm Jim Lee, climateviewer.com, climateviewer.org. What's up? Who's left?
Quincy. So
there we go. Well, I guess let's jump into it here. Got quite a few topics for tonight, mostly revolving around citizens journalism, which is something quite a lot of people involved in this show and our guest here is involved in.
That's a fact. So I'm a journalist. Barrett's old school and Barrett, why don't you just start out by telling everybody, because I know that there are some new cats from the Anon world who have no freaking clue who you are. I got a lot of respect for you. Tell everybody about yourself.
I was a journalist throughout my 20s, and towards the end, around 2009, I began creating a group called Project PM, which was intended to address some of the problems that had come up or sort of been unaddressed in the media, particularly in the U.S. That sort of evolved from there after I got in touch with Greg Hausch, who had been one of the early Anons, one of the founders of Project Chanology, which is Anon's first very wildly successful campaign. He emailed me after I read an article about Anonymous, and him and I talked for a year while I was building up this Project PM thing. And then when the Tunisian Revolution started at the end of 2010, and some of the major Anon figures were from Tunisia, I was invited to come work out of the AnonOps IRC server, which at that time and for the next year or so was kind of the main incubator of anonymous activity. And did a lot of work on the Tunisian Revolution, legal defense for Anons who have been raided over the attacks on PayPal and Amazon in retribution for their cutting off funds to WikiLeaks. At the end of beginning of February 2011, it came to light that we had been spied upon by an intelligence contractor, an ex-military guy who runs a company called HB Gary Federal. He had announced to the Financial Times that he had been monitoring our activity and identified what he called our leaders, our secret leaders. And the information that he gave in this article was clearly nonsense. He was, just saying things that were just demonstrably untrue. And so we put a little press release out making fun of him. And the next day, a group of Anons told me they're going to go hit this guy. And they did. They got into his servers of his company, parent company, stole all their emails, deleted a lot of their files, took over their social network stuff. And then we had these 70,000 emails all of a sudden, which ended up demonstrating that there had been a very corrosive conspiracy among several companies, including Palantir, which is better known today than it was back then, set in motion by the DOJ itself to go after activists and journalists in ways that are illegal, in ways that would be, prosecuted if we had done them. DOS attacks, for instance, putting out false information, setting up people for fraud. They specifically named Glenn Greenwald as someone they would go after and try to intimidate. They've talked about in these slides for their customers, Bank of America and Chamber of Commerce, who were the ones who wanted to get them to go after activists and WikiLeaks and journalists and whatnot, showing how they would perform these various actions against, by which to intimidate and disrupt entirely legal, entirely legitimate activism in this country. And so we hit upon that, and thereafter there was a round of media attention. This guy had to resign. There was calls in Congress for an investigation into these activities. There was no investigation, unfortunately, because the DOJ was the one who would decide on that investigation. It turns out they didn't want to investigate themselves. So Project PM turned into a collaborative, crowdsourced journalism effort to document everything else in these emails, as well as anything else we could find that could help to shine a light on this intelligence contracting sector, this alliance between the state and private entities to go after, other citizens. And we did that for a while. We had some successes. We're able to get some things out there to an extent that, some journalists, we're now aware of them and can sort of evaluate and kind of keep on this subject. At that same time, the FBI started investigating me, started investigating, obviously, a lot of the hackers. I was eventually, raided and was arrested eventually. Some point was facing 17 charges, carrying 105 years in prison altogether, federal charges, many of which they later had to drop because they were nonsense, and some of which I eventually pled to rather than go to trial. Did 4 years in prison, got out, and am now putting together a new framework for activism called the Pursuance System, which you can read about at pursuanceproject.org, and which will be rolling out over the next year.
Pimpin'. Well said, brother man. So for those who can you, Tyler, can you put me up to full screen? Can you see this shit? Because I got it ready already. Do we have video for this?
Our arm is streaming. Right
Yeah,
now.
I got you. Hold on one sec.
Because you're going to want to see this. So back in 2013, I uploaded that at least one of the files from this treasure trove you were talking about right here. It's on the screen, and this is from Palantir, and it's called the WikiLeaks Threat. And it goes an overview by Palantir Technologies, HB Gary Federal, and Barrico Technologies. And basically what you see in here is they talk about, why WikiLeaks is a problem, how it's dangerous to national security and our intelligence. They map out everybody associated with it. Journalists are down here. This block down here that's blue says American citizens. So I think that Barrett's main point, that if you don't catch anything else, what you're going to learn today from Barrett Brown is that the U.S. government paid defense contractors to target American journalists to shut them up through character assassination, through fake social media accounts. Those are called persona management software, which looks like this. And that persona management software, the HB Gary official sock sorter, that what they basically are doing is they can create virtual machines that have Windows already loaded up, logged into Facebook, into Google Plus, into every social media account, and then run 50 of these virtual machines on one computer and have an Air Force tech sitting there running all 50 accounts same time. And that's what they use to target him.
What everyone needs to know, and what he just summarized pretty well, is that these companies in general, they have a number of technologies and methodologies that would have been impossible and unimaginable in many respects 20 years ago, which are now proliferating. They're being created by companies that work with the government, that work with foreign governments, that work with corporations, all sort of together in this sort of climate of state corporate collaboration, usually directed against the public interest, often directed against public knowledge, indefensible, something they can't really make a case for when it gets discovered. And the most important part of this is that regardless of what crimes they commit in the process and what crimes they plan, they will not suffer any consequences for anything they do whatsoever. That,
they're under that blanket.
That was a central fact of anonymous activity in 2011, is that through everything else, everything we did was subject to illicit, probably illegal attacks from the U.S. government, the British governments, a number of private entities, and other parties sort of less formally connected, usually ex-military people with an ideological opposition to leaks and public transparency. GCHQ, which is the British intelligence, one of the British intelligence services, one of the documents that Snowden released to Glenn Greenwald and Laura Poitras, that he's since written about and published a couple of years ago, shows exactly what the GCHQ strategy was against Anonymous. They talk about putting up big blog posts. They talk about a number of hacks. It's stuff that's largely, it's very similar to what COINTELPRO used to do under the FBI in the 50s and 60s when they infiltrated activist groups, anti-war groups, civil rights groups, and committed crimes against them. It's the same kind of thing. It's just they can do it now in a way that requires less resources on their end, and is potentially much more insidious by virtue, first of all, of involving pretty talented engineers and developers with military intelligence backgrounds, and also because, again, even when we point them out, even when there's some media coverage and we document everything as we did on the echelon.org site, it doesn't really matter, because most journalists are still not aware of these things, and most activists still aren't aware of these things. And they need to be, because to the extent that you are effective, to the extent that you actually constitute a threat to the established order, you will be subject to these technologies, many of which we still don't understand, even after having looked through all these emails, all these patents, all these tax returns. So that's the thing to keep in mind, and it's a reason why you should go look at the Echelon 2 site, which is still up at wiki.project-pm.org, and which still contains a lot of this information.
Hell yeah, key site. And how long have you updated that any at all recently? I mean, you're doing anything with that now?
It was maintained by a couple of people while I was in prison, but it's still mostly the same stuff. One of several projects that we'll be doing under the Pursuant system, which I'll talk about in a moment, will be sort of a revitalization of Project PM's work on that. There's still obviously plenty of HB Gary emails dating back in 2011 that the press at large has not had the foresight to keep looking through. And luckily, WikiLeaks, on the day of my release back in November 2016, did put up the HB Gary emails again in a searchable format, which is important because for a while there, we didn't really have them maintained in a way that you could link to. And that was one of those mundane factors that kind of made it harder than it already was to get journalists to pay attention. So now that's back up, and now as we go forward over the next year, we're going to be putting together more efficient means of doing this kind of online collaboration, this kind of crowdsourced journalism. And so this issue, we're not done with it. There's plenty of opportunity that will arise to get this back in the public eye and to get some of these things addressed, especially since they're going to make more mistakes. They'll be caught out on other similar programs. There'll become a point in which some of the better journalists who may not be aware of it yet will decide that, yes, this is important. The story's not over. This is still a active issue that's very fundamental, that really strikes to fundamental processes of self-government, and which has already kind of come up a bit in the recent Senate hearings on Russian active measures. They're now talking about things that sound like persona management. They're talking about what the Russians doing them. They haven't mentioned that CENTCOM does it. The CENTCOM had to admit doing it after this was all revealed. They don't talk about how McGill Air Force Base and Bagram Air Force Base both have Air Force run persona management programs, which I'm sure for the most part are used against what they consider to be our enemies, but 100%.
And isn't that out of MISOC also?
Sorry?
MISOC? You got that? Military Information Systems Operational Control, MISOC. And Fort Oaxaca, the Air Force Base with no fucking runway. Yeah, they come visit my website regularly. That's why I say it's kind of a running joke that that on the news we're hearing about unmasking of names, Trump surveillance. Oh, he was listened to, and I mean as well as anybody else about the UK USA revolving door, and it goes like this for those who don't know it. They're the Five Eyes of the, you know, the signals intelligence agreement between the UK-USA agreement started in World War II. It grew from there, and now we have the 13 Eyes, but long story short, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, US, UK. That's the Five Eyes. And the Five Eyes are connected via a network called Stone Ghost. And Stone Ghost is the signals intelligence network that shares all of the signals intelligence of the Five Eyes country. So if you want to spy on Barrett Brown and you work for the White House or anybody in America, you simply ask the guys in the UK to do it, and vice versa. And then they send it over the Stone Ghost network. So this is well documented. Even Glenn Greenwald's talked about this at length. So that's how they spy on every single U.S. citizen legally, you know, despite any kind of, and the same with the UK. So the UK can ask us to spy on any UK citizen, and then it's suddenly somehow legal because they didn't actually do it themselves. It was sent to them by a partner. It's all bullshit.
Yeah, there's several legal loopholes of that sort that can be used. I mean, but oftentimes they don't even bother. Sometimes they just do it anyway.
Yeah, they can do it anyway.
Or the other very similar dynamic is using contractors to do it. You know, they give them a broad mission, wire us out, say, you know, we want you to go after this company, wants you to go after WikiLeaks and do whatever you want to do, and then they do it. And they, you know, as we've seen with HB Gary emails, as we've seen from a few other releases, Stratfor, most notably, which WikiLeaks also has, you know, this. There is a close degree of cooperation, not just among the Five Eyes, but among the Five Eyes and companies that are considered by the state to be natural allies. And that was very pervasive throughout the 20th century, and in the U.S. especially. We have a lot of businessmen who worked in very limited capacities for the CIA, some who worked in more active capacities. That's a problem with intelligence services, is they tend to become less regimented. The charter itself defining the intelligence service becomes irrelevant because there's also this amorphous set of personal connections that exist outside of it. And of course, that's amplified when the CIA is founded, as it was, largely with Wall Street people, and maintains those connections over time. Then you have all kinds of, you know, rather than one all-pervasive agenda, which would be still bad, but at least easier to kind of analyze and combat, you have a bunch of different people with degrees of power and access doing many different things in their own interests or in their perceived interests, and it becomes very difficult to get a handle on, even if you're overseeing it, even if you're the Pentagon. You don't know what these agencies are doing. So that's another factor of this that kind of transcends the old issue of how much power does the state have. The question becomes, in our age, how much power do these unknown people have who don't necessarily work for the state but have connections to it? And to what extent does that power override the more official power of an actual bureaucrat?
Yeah,
we'll see that more in the next few years, I'm sure.
That's like the Finn Fisher guys. And if you guys have never heard of this company, but I'll give you an example. Finn Fisher, F-I-N, you know, Fisher like you fish for fish. Finn Fisher is a company that is a defense contractor that breaks into people's computers. And they sell software to governments that allow them to break into your computer. And here's the fucked up part. Whenever Gaddafi met his maker, they, you know, destroyed his, you know, campus, and in there they found the receipts from Finn Fisher to Gaddafi. These guys don't only serve the American military, you know what I mean, as defense contractors. Yeah, they've got contracts with the U.S., but guess what? They don't have fucking morals at all. So they will sell their software to Iran, to, you know, obviously Libya, China. You know, there wouldn't be a great firewall of China if it weren't for an IT industry that supported them. So at the end of the day, this is the greatest deception that I think everybody lives in, is that there's security at all. Because when you got the CIA hoarding 0 days, when you got Finn Fisher and IT guys hoarding 0 days, there's no security at all, and there never will be. So if they hoard 0 days and one of the individuals, you know, out on the internets and the inner tubes decides to go reach in there and grab them, then suddenly they're used for bad purposes, as they would say. So there is no good or bad. There is only secure and not secure. So if these sons of bitches can lie to the world and tell them, put your health information, all your money, and everything into these digital boxes, and we swear they're secure when they know that by design they are not. That's really the thing that, you know, Snowden, everybody along the way is trying to wake you up to, is that this will never be secure as long as there's government secrecy and a spy war. Right?
Ben Fisher's the best example of that dynamic. It's very well documented. I believe that was the one that was catering to the Egyptians that came out a couple of years after the revolution.
Yeah.
The other one is Hacking Team. Hacking Team, I think about 2 years ago, that was uncovered, their involvement with other foreign dictatorships. You have those companies based in the Europe and U.S. You also have companies like Corvus, which is based in D.C., that seems to have a technical component, probably outsourced to companies like Ben Fisher, Hacking Team, but also does a more direct propaganda component.
Incutel.
Incutel is the big kind of source of all this. It's
like so bigger, dude.
Palantir got its some of its first seed money from Incutel way back when. Incutel very much embodies the cooperation that we see, informally or otherwise, between a lot of the tech sector and the intelligence community, and which leads us to another problem, which is that a lot of people who work for the tech sector, as we can kind of see this in HB Gary emails, we see them talk and sort of chat and whatever. We kind of see them taking on the romanticism of a badass spy. We saw emails between Matthew Steckman and Eli Bingham of Palantir during the Team Themis conspiracy, say stuff like, "Damn, it feels good to be a gangster." These guys are young. These are young guys. They're getting paid money. They're being put in a position where they have clearances. In some cases, they're involved in the very romantic cloak and dagger intelligence world, and they're absolutely willing to justify whatever they're doing. Even beyond that, even those who have sort of higher degree of morals don't even often know what they're doing. There's a great deal of compartmentalization, which occurs throughout the intelligence community. That's always been the case, and it's very much the case with these companies. Corvus, going back to Corvus just real quick, provides propaganda services to the government of Bahrain, which is particularly significant because Bahrain, was importing Saudi troops and tanks to help put down pro-democracy protesters back in 2011, 2012. And meanwhile, Corvus is out there behind the scenes working to discredit activist leaders like Mariam Al-Kajawa and her father, who was doing about an 80-day hunger strike at that point. And they have, it's to the point that Corvus has a representative whenever Bahrain's ambassador to the U.S. does interviews with newspapers. It's we're seeing the framework of something very, very difficult to contend with because there's money and ideology involved. There's people, who believe in their particular fanatical kingdom. There's people who believe in the national security state that requires corpses to survive and justifies its actions with the guise of national security. You also have money. You have money, you have pride, you have the desire to feel as if you are part of some shadowy, group of shot callers. And you see these over and over again in the emails. You see this mentality, and it's something that's going to be very difficult to counter over the next few years.
I agree.
Glad to hear that. I thought you might.
Yeah, I'm looking at this Palantir thing, and this is the stuff that like everybody, like you want to talk about a conspiracy. I'm gonna read this shit word for word for you. If you guys don't know me, this is on climateviewer.com/new-world-order. climateviewer.com/new-world-order. You can actually download this file. This is Palantir. This is what they say they're going to do to discredit Barrett and Glenn Greenwald and everybody else along the way. Feed the fuel between feuding groups. Disinformation. Create messages around actions to sabotage and discredit the opposing organization. Submit fake documents and then call out the error. Search for leaks. Use social media to identify people who are risky, and then media campaign to push the radical and reckless nature of WikiLeaks activities. Sustain pressure. Does nothing for the fanatics, but creates concern and doubt amongst moderates. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That's what these sons of bitches do. Whenever the truth is out there and it's right in your face and it looks really bad, what do they say they're going to do? Cyber attacks against infrastructure to get data on the on document submitters. This would kill the project, referring to WikiLeaks. So attack servers, attack character, make fake accounts, destroy, everybody's reputation, paid for by the U.S. government.
Censor the world, basically.
Just censor the truth.
Team Demas is a very indicative incident. It's very illustrative of the problems we face increasingly as a society. Let's talk a little bit more about what the next steps are, because we know the nature of the situation. We know how difficult it is to contend with. We know that anyone who is an honest person of good nature, to the extent that he or she chooses to take his citizenship seriously, that he is up against a very pervasive climate of collaboration between state and corporate entities that's very much global and very much entrenched and has every advantage. How do we contend with that? Back in 2011, 2012, we saw a number of great successes by groups like WikiLeaks, by movements like Anonymous, Telecomics, which was another group that I think is no longer in play, but which did a great job providing communication services to people under dictatorships. For instance, when Egypt cut off the internet. Project PM, which was a great early instance of crowdsourced journalism. We had dozens of people contributing to that over a year or so. We're compiling a really unprecedented set of information that was of great use to a lot of journalists. A lot of journalists who did cover that, they went to Project PM's website first and did their research there just as a starting point. But it all kind of, it did fade out to some extent. Even aside from people going to prison, even beyond that, there's a lot of internal problems that come up when you have amorphous movements, just like there's internal problems that come up when you have a very stolid traditional institution. So having seen a lot of that and having, still having a thirst to see more done over the next few years, some of us have been working on something we call the pursuance system. This is a framework that's intended to address those problems we just discussed here. Infighting, infiltration by contractors, a tendency to, put work aside and get into little disputes and that kind of thing. There's a lot of factors that come up when you have these social dynamics. Beyond that, there's always a problem when you have something like Anonymous. Who gets to decide what to do? Who gets to say what is anonymous and what isn't? Those are natural problems that come up when you have something that comes out of a 4chan practical joke and then evolves from there to an activist group. It's very understandable that those things would happen and that Anonymous would kind of burn out to some extent under its own energies. So what we're putting together here is a framework whereby every single person who's brought into the system, this ecosystem, this online space, has the equal right to create what's called a pursuance. A pursuance is an entity made up of 2 or more people for a particular purpose. Could be a broad purpose, could be a very specific purpose. And so everyone can create this pursuance. Everyone can apply to join pursuances. Creating a pursuance, it's yours as you created it. You can elect to delegate power on it. You can elect to have several people have the same agency as you do over how it grows, what it does. And many pursuances will do that. Others will, someone will create it and say, here's what I want to do. Here's what I'm interested in doing. Here is how the relationships will work. Here's the exact role that you will play if you join, and people can join those as they like, or start their own, or whatever. So you'll have this ecosystem of these little entities that are clearly delineated, that are highly secure because of the end-to-end encryption that we're incorporating, thanks to some of the people we have contributing to it who are figures in the crypto and open source communities, which will make use of a lot of great applications that have come out in the last 5 years. Transparency Toolkit is one of them, that are kind of the state of the art in terms of collaborative journalism, collaborative research. And so you'll have these groups evolve, and you'll have people who may not have been interested in working with Anonymous because they don't want to be in an IRC channel full of 100 people and not know what page we're all on, not know what's going to happen to these 100 people. That want to have a clearly delineated relationship where everyone knows, everyone in the pursuance has joined very procedurally, with open eyes as to what we're doing. And leave a pursuance at any given time and start their own if they don't like the direction or the protocols. So you'll have this ecosystem of different pursuances evolving. You'll have people developing new, more efficient ways of collaboration. The system is set up such that a pursuance can expect to grow, as in you can create pursuance, have 2 people under you, allow them to bring on people under them, however they like, and not have to worry about, when we have 1,000 people, will this be over cumbersome? There's a number of specifics that you can see them again at pursuanceproject.org that kind of explain. But at any rate, it's something that we've come to design after, obviously having spent a lot of time thinking about these problems and have experienced these problems.
Is it on GitHub?
I don't believe so yet. Some of the technical details can be better relayed by Steve Phillips, who is running the actual software into these things. And we actually just started programming it and kind of designing it.
Is he on Twitter or something? How can people get in touch with him?
The best way to get in touch, if you are a programmer, for instance, and want to be involved in this, his email address he's given me for people to send. It's team@pursuanceproject.org. That's team@pursuanceproject.org. So if you're a developer or a programmer, that's where you should email. If you're just interested, if you're maybe not technical or at any rate interested in getting brought into the system when it starts up in the next few months, go to pursuanceproject.org, and there's a thing you can fill out there. You can put your PGP key and all that, and you'll get updates as we get closer to that release. So there's a lot of questions that are kind of answered on that site. There's a lot of things that are still being decided. So one of the reasons that we're talking about is because we want some input, obviously, for people who have worked in these kind of environments before, people who haven't, people who have more institutional activist background, people who have worked for NGOs, people who have worked with nothing, but are just clever, well-meaning people who want to be involved in real, cogent, effective opposition to these criminalized institutions. All of these people have something to gain from thinking more directly and more ardently about how we organize and what kind of structures can hope to contend with the things we're fighting. And that's what this is intended to address.
Well, I hate to cut in. My name is Rosie. Hi, guys. I was listening to what you say. I don't know who that was, but the whole idea of the structure of what you're talking about with pursuance, the layer system that you're talking about, how you have a group of 1,000, and then you have people in kind of like a hierarchy setting what you're doing. We do the same kind of layering on Facebook groups throughout, as far as communication and skills and different things like that. And you're right, there's people of all different levels out there who want to participate in something bigger. But it's a matter of them understanding and knowing how to join. So, Tyler, if you're listening, you should put that information on the page and share it.
Oh, which one?
Because the Pursuant, what was he just talking about?
It's right here. I got it.
Yeah.
Pursuanceproject.org. And
because people will want to know and they'll want to understand what it is. And I mean, the more that it's talked about, shared, and explained, it's a concept that's easily grasped. But there's a lot of people that want to get involved. Like I said, whether they're activists, whether they're programmers, whether they just share something. Knowledge is power.
The key aspect here is that a lot of people have realized that we had some great successes just using the tools that were available that really weren't here for this, using Twitter, using IRC, using Facebook, these kinds of things. And so to the extent that we figure out that we solve the problem of how do we more efficiently do this, how do we address the problems that come up by virtue of these mediums, and how do we make our stuff just a little bit more efficient, that's obviously a key problem that to the extent that we solve it, to the extent that we address our energies to and looking at the problems that come up and the opportunities and just making it a little bit better, we're more likely to be able to gain momentum over the next few years.
I completely agree.
Now, of course, there were some great advantages to
Yeah, I
having
think
more amorphous. There were some advantages to having IRC rooms where lots of people that just kind of like come in here and here's your ideas and make a new room or whatever. That actually worked really well to the extent that we had the right people there. But it also, again, had a lot of problems that we think we can keep that same energy and that same agility while also minimizing the issues that come up in that situation. And of course, the great thing about the Pursuant system is that you can still create a system that's very non-structured and it's very egalitarian. You can still create a system where everyone has a strong agency over the centrality of the project, as in where everyone can vote, for instance, or where everyone has an equal degree of
Their
access.
voices can be heard.
But on the other hand, people who want to have something more regimented, more clear, in which there's people with defined duties and defined rights over the system, they can do that as well. And these different entities, even if they're set up very differently, they can still collaborate. That's the other thing, is that you're going to see with this system, these entities, as they grow more efficient, also build connections among themselves to share information, share resources, that sort of thing. Eventually, you'll see us.
It sounds like the interwebs currently, but the interwebs currently cannot communicate. You have tons and tons of people all broke up into little groups or little cliques, so to speak, or sects, if they want to say that, and nobody's communicating for the same cause. You know what I mean? Everybody's out there going different directions and not collaborating. There's no organization. And I hate to again use the word structure, but if there's not some sort of structure and trying to build something, whether it's communication for change, communication for peace, or even just for a cause, you just got a whole bunch of people running around like chickens with their head cut off, I guess you could say.
Absolutely. That's absolutely.
Yeah, Rose is right. This division is massive right now. I mean, most of us got boosted.
Oh, that's
from
JC.
Facebook,
I haven't talked to him in forever.
and we haven't been able to make accounts because of the UMI or something like that. We haven't been able to make new socks. They just keep killing us.
Yeah, and you're subject to the whims and fancies of Facebook or Twitter or whatever when we use those systems. And of course, those things will always be part of the picture. We're always going to use the mediums that are out there, but this will give us something that's ours. That a new policy at Facebook can't suddenly shut things down and disrupt things. This will be something that is intended for activism, and specifically, it's intended for a certain a wide branch of ideology. Kind of, this is not like a medium like Facebook where hey, whoever you are, come use this. If you're alt-right and you're a fascist and you're a Nazi, come use this. This is something that when you're brought in, you've agreed to several very broad statements. You've agreed that you're opposed to the drug war. You've agreed that you're opposed to the national security state. You agreed that gays have the same rights as heterosexuals. Beyond that, people can disagree about tactics and about a number of other issues, sort of lesser than those. But to the extent that we have a broad ideological alliance among people who are not reactionaries, people who are not like nationalists, then we'll be able to sort of create an environment in which people can disagree about these lesser issues that aren't as fundamental and still collaborate amongst themselves.
Yeah, totally. Tyler,
that's really important, I would say, because a lot of people are getting caught up in this fight over petty this, petty that, and it's really wasting a lot of time on good people's behalves, like getting them caught in the middle of stuff, and it's become quite ridiculous. This is something we really need to see emerge for our sake, I believe.
Now the Pursuance, what you're talking about, is this going to be a software, a website?
Yes. This is software that's being developed right now. We've got a core team in place with several really great people who have been involved in open source and encryption software for a long time, have had experience with foundations, getting grant money. We're hiring a couple programmers, sort of niche programmers. We're also asking for volunteers for some certain very specific programming, which is why, again, if anybody's listening and wants to be involved in the production of this, which will go on for the next few months, they can send an email to team. That's team@pursuanceproject.org, and talk to our technical guys. But again, just to reiterate, those more general users, people who just want to be informed about when this comes out, go to pursuanceproject.org and fill out the thing there. And so it's software, and it's open source. It is something that will there will be a central instance, as in everyone, even if they're running their own instance of it, will be connected to this large, sort of a three-dimensional space where these pursuances will actually be visible, like molecules, and where we'll have all these people, as well as organizations, NGOs, nonprofit, existing institutions can come into this and create a pursuance presence and take advantage of the people that are out there that would like to be involved in these issues but don't really have the inclination or the ability to, rise to the ranks of a institution. Frankly, there's a lot of people out there that are like that don't really have the personality compatible with an office or for working, for a boss, but do have talents, do have energy, and would be society would be well served to have those people be able to channel those energies into something in a way that makes sense both for the entities and for the people, the individuals involved.
Well, that sounds like my 9-to-5 job I already have, and that's kind of exciting, actually. There's lots of people, like you said, with different skills. As far as like the structure of what you're doing, are you going to do like an IRC with that software? Are you thinking more of like a blog, like communication?
So the way these work is fundamentally so imagine a three-dimensional space. Everyone who's brought into the system exists in this three-dimensional space simulated by the server. Having been brought in, you can create your own pursuance, which is, let's think of it as a square. You create it, you're a circle connected to a square. That square is yours. That's a DNA and constitution of the pursuance. As time goes on, you can bring on other people, either connected to you via these spokes, so that they are still, they've joined you under your agency at that point, or you can bring on people and allow them to have the same access to the pursuance itself as you do, which would make them, again, equally in control of how this grows. Either way, there's a number of ways it could be structured from there, but you essentially have something that looks like a box connected to a sphere with other spheres running off it, representing other people who have joined it. And there's different ways within that sort of system that information flows back and forth, where collaborative documents flow back and forth. And there's a number, even beyond those structures, which can be set up in many different ways for different tasks. There are a number of settings that specify exactly like, to what extent does information at one point of the pursuance go to other points? Does it just go directly to the person above you, or does it randomly appear elsewhere in the pursuance so as to ensure that good ideas get extra hearing? There's a number of settings that you can determine. Again, if you join a pursuance, are you permitted to bring on people under you to help you with your tasks? Can you delegate things? Can you create your own sub-projects? Those are all things that are decided, originally by the person who creates the pursuance, but those powers can be delegated, just like, again, a constitution. It's like a living flow chart, essentially. And it takes a lot of existing ideas and kind of compiles them together, adds a few things that we've added, and it includes a great deal of software that already exists that's not really well known. It's just not getting in front of people, but that, to the extent we put them in a position where they will have these tools, they'll be more likely to use them and to gain some advantage by doing so. So you'll have this ecosystem where people are developing new structures to perform tasks collaboratively. And as they hit upon structures and settings that work for a particular task, they can resubmit that to the central library. And anyone coming in can look at that central library and see, look, here's a structure we made. It's very good for getting people to arrange bike donation drives in cities. And we don't
Barrett, I'm sorry. I got to stop you before I fucking lose my shit. Who are you working with? I mean, who else is on your team?
We have, so the core people actually doing the programming. We have Stephen Phillips out of San Francisco. We have Devin Balkin out of New York, who is heavily involved in Occupy. We have other people advising us, like this fellow Shadash or MC McGrath out of Berlin, who he created.
I swear to God, and I don't want to be I'm not going to be a dickhole or nothing, but I swear to God, you're describing my project. I've been working on it for fucking 6 years, and it's called Attention. I'll shut up about it, but I've got a video of what you're talking about working right here on the fucking screen. And this is these are posts coming in, and what you were talking about, what we call trust networks. I guess you're calling them pursuants, but we've been calling them trust networks, and it's basically, you know, resource sharing. You know, we've actually got a Hawaiian tribe who's using the software right now. And here you can see like all the data, you know, all the different post data types, and then you can sort them by category. So like, you know, what's the relationship of this data, and break it up into, and it's, you know, all inverse kinematics, drag it around. Hey, these are all earthquakes that are within 50 miles of this nuclear power plant, which had flooding, things like that. So, you know, it's kind of crazy. Like you're like the third person who, and I swear maybe, you know, hey, synchronicity, right? Everybody kind of having the same idea at the same time, but it's getting fucking weird talking to the third person describing the exact same thing that we've been working on for like 6 years. So
yeah, in fact, there's already things out there kind of that people who are into liquid democracy, as it's called, particularly in Germany, there's software that's kind of like what we're doing. Ours is somewhat different. Ours kind of evolved out of something that was intended to do something else. Originally, Project PM, intended to create something like this, was originally supposed to be a blogger network by which to better filter information. Then we started getting volunteers who weren't media people but wanted to, you know, be activists, and we sort of expanded it, sort of made it a little bit more general, so as to just, you know, more easily organize projects. And then so this is all kind of influenced from what problems we've seen in online activism, and kind of addresses those things. So yeah, those ideas about how to best organize people using
everybody's battling for that right now, right?
So yeah, so we have a very good chance now to actually get this implemented in a way that will bring in people, not just because, you know, of our ability to reach a lot of people, but also because the times are such that we've been able to bring in more mainstream people to assist us. Like we'll have a board of directors because we're going to be raising money, getting grants to pay some programmers. We have Alex Winter, who is best known as an actor, you know, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and all that.
Nice.
Very heavily involved in the information freedom movement for a number of years, as documentaries. Did a little documentary on me when I was released. We have Jay Lederman, Tor Eklund, the two U.S.-based non-lawyers who have defended a lot of people in this movement. We have a couple of professors, Mano Singham, formerly of Case Western University, and Robert Tynes of Bard University, Prison Project, who are going to be on the board and kind of helping us to bring on more and more people who weren't really involved in this sector of activism, people for a number of reasons, but who at this point, based on what's been happening and based on, you know, the argument that we can make to them, will be interested in using the system, transferring their projects to this, taking existing efforts and better mobilizing their people and better accessing potential recruits by using the system. We're putting a lot of different kinds of strategy into making this a success. And a lot of it's wrapped up in the book I'm doing for next year. It'll come out next year. I'm writing it this year. The last third of it will be about this larger idea of process democracy that we're calling it, which is, you know, essentially non-institutional collaboration. That doesn't depend on someone creating a constitution and everyone has to sort of fall into that constitution. This is something where everyone creates their own constitution and potentially, or you know, agrees to join a constitutional structure, you know, with their eyes open, knowing what it is. And again, yeah, like I said, so this is something. This is an idea whose time has come. It's very much the logical next step to having understood, as a lot of us have, that this century will be defined by the fact that for the first time in human history, any individual can collaborate with any other individual on the planet.
Yeah.
And all institutions were evolved in an entirely different environment in which collaboration was heavily limited. And those facts are now in place. They're more readily evident based on what's happened in the last few years with small groups of people heavily influencing world affairs. And I think as these successes accumulate and as the case is made a little bit more cogently and publicized, we'll have a large population across the world to draw upon as we implement these things further.
Yeah, and I'd like to real quick give a shout out to a couple of the other projects. So yours is obviously pursuanceproject.org. Mine is obviously called Nettention. It's Network Attention, Intention, Nettention. There's another one called selfearth.com. It's Jamie and Warren. They're good people. Another one is alexandria.io. Another similar kind of idea. I don't believe they're fully open source, and this is why I asked you, are you on GitHub? Because I'm just going to, put your money where your mouth is. Unless it's on GitHub, it is not fucking open source. Don't let anybody ever tell you different. So and I'll let you respond, but once yours is on GitHub, dude, I will totally I've got code in Node.js running blockchain, matrix.org, riot.im, the sickest shit on the planet, bleeding second WebSocket bad motherfucker. And I will contribute to your project. I'll email the guy and see if he wants to put it on GitHub. But the thing is, every single one that I've seen so far is mostly open source. And I won't have anything short of it. So like right now with Intention, for 6 years, me and one other dude have been working on it, period. And Google stole a portion of the code. Raytheon stole a portion of the code. And I'm willing to tell you that when I show your guys what we got, they're going to shit themselves. But I'm telling you. They stole
it off GitHub?
Well, originally we had Google Doc. No, we had a Google Doc, and we were working with private code. And Google stole a portion of it. I'm not going to get into it here in a public setting. Raytheon stole the other portion. It's called Vega now. This climate here, I'll show you. This climate viewer 3D thing.
They're running it, and then you saw them running it. Yeah.
So what happened was Google shut down all of Google Earth websites on the internet. And I was tracking satellites, every flight on the planet, every boat, ship on the planet, real-time weather, real-time satellites, every NASA sensor on the planet, all real-time. And they shut me down. And I was like, oh shit, what am I going to do? Well, I made this, we were talking about our Intention idea, and in it we were going to use something called Cesium. And I laid out in order what the features I was going to put into this Climate Viewer 3D Cesium thing over here. And then my friend, he sends me a video. He's like, you're not going to fucking believe this. And I'm watching it. It's a video by Raytheon. It's called Vega. And they go down the list. Like they were watching my bullet points, showing me they had already made the motherfucker. And I'm looking at him going, I don't have $1 billion in a defense contractor budget. But they had stolen, I want heat maps. I want drag and drop. In like my bullet point in order, their video was in order. That is far beyond coincidental.
Well, Chip, they will steal your shit. Sue them. You should just sue them, man. All right.
I mean, I could ever prove, this isn't it's just a bunch of features on a fucking open source thing. But regardless, the stuff that we're talking about in the future with, I don't want to get into it. See, I'm not going to give away this fucking idea to nobody. But basically we're making something called an object. And an object is a networked object. It is a universal container for all that is the internet. It is portable. It can be downloaded. It can be put on a fucking flash drive, sent to somebody with an air gap machine. They can view it, and a map, a graph, a feed, a fucking timeline. And you can use that to build trust networks with other people. So
and it's going to be free, yeah?
Yeah, so you can do the resource sharing. Like, hey, I was going to show you the thing, but it's basically like, I need, I want, I can, I do. I want teaching lessons. I want somebody to teach me guitar. You want ride to the barbershop every Friday. Bam, let's hook up, baby. The AI already goes, this guy knows how to play guitar. He's a great teacher. He's got a 5 rating on his likability, so he's not a dickhead to everybody he talks to. You should probably hook up, and the thing will meet you that way. Like take 2 people, not friends, shouldn't have anything to do with each other. Craigslist their ass out and say, "Hey, you got a need. He's got what you want." Things like that. I mean, that's what we're talking about.
What's your take on Facebook, man? Do you think it's fucking slowly killing itself? Do you think Zuckerberg's gone?
Facebook's imploding right now. Facebook's pulling a MySpace right now.
It's what? Huh?
Yeah, it's totally going MySpace right now.
Yeah. It's dying, isn't it?
Yeah, it's dying on the vine. And I mean, everybody's flocking away. And most people are, the funny thing is, unlike MySpace, where people went from MySpace to Facebook, this time everybody's just leaving Facebook and saying, fuck the internet.
Now they're going to MeWe.
Seriously, it's pretty
MeWe
unique.
is picking up.
It's in to be out, man. That's my saying. You know, it's in to be out finally. You know, get your ass out in nature. Fuck the internet for a little while, but come on back. We need you.
Yeah, MeWe is kicking off big time.
All right, I'm gonna grab a drink. I'll be back, guys.
MeWe network, social networking is really picking up at the moment. Agree with that, Bart?
Hey, can I add, you know, in addition to this, you know, Pursuance project, which is like a crowdsourcing effort, intelligence effort, you know, and, you know, media side, it seems like there needs to be some big effort. I mean, it'd have to be huge to go after these government agencies. You know, there's so many of them now, the 3-letter agencies that are behind all this. The more money they get, the longer it goes on, the larger number there are, the bigger this problem gets. You know, that, you know, when everybody, we're even referring to it now, you know, the deep state, you know, there's something else there, another government that's not really yours. You know, what do you do about that, you know, from the government side?
Well, the pursuance system is more of a framework. Like there's specific pursuances within that system we'll be creating for these other problems. But the point of it is that everyone can come and create their own pursuances for addressing these other, you know, larger problems. I mean, so this isn't like something that we're creating for the purposes of researching intelligence contracting. Crowdsourced journalism is a part of one of the things you can do very efficiently with the pursuance system, but it's also for any number of other things. Pretty much, basically, it's everything that you've seen Anonymous do, or other groups do, institutions, NGOs, nonprofits, people, you know, across the world, you know, working against, you know, criminalized institutions, you can do with the pursuance system more efficiently. And then once you're doing them, you can also, it's easier for you to collaborate with other pursuances that are doing something that maybe overlapping what you're doing, or where you can share information to benefit of both groups. So it's not like this isn't a content directed thing where we're asking people to come in here and do crowdsourced journalism about contracting and that's it. That's just one of the things that we'll be setting in motion within that system. So that kind of thing you're talking about entirely applicable to this framework that we're building. It's a very broad. It's a broad exercise, and what's done depends in large part on who comes in and who creates these efforts and how well they design them, and then you know, who we manage to convince to come in and assist with these things. So that, like a number of other issues that are all very fundamental, can be addressed with the system, just like you would with an IRC server and a Facebook page and Twitter account. This kind of makes it a little bit more, I think, more rigorous, you know.
Hey Barrett, this is Loki. We have a question from the audience. Somebody wanted to know what you have to say about internet security.
Well, I've never been, you know, I'm not a technical person. I don't have a background in computer science or programming or anything. I was a journalist. I just happened to get involved with Anonymous, which has a lot of technical people, obviously. And but I can say that in general, you know, everyone who has the ability to keep themselves off the radar, or at least inaccessible to governments and corporate factions, should do so. But there's a great deal that can be done if we're clever enough about it, that is not effectively deterred by knowing about it. As in, there are things that can be done as we better sort of regiments our methods, experiments, kind of you know, determine who's done what and how well it's worked, and really do a better job of making that accessible, that, you know, you can still keep secure and still keep, you know, make it difficult to be accessed by the enemy, but which, by virtue of what it is, can't be countered by these old methods. I mean, you're always going to have, you'll never have 100% security. You'll never have 100%, you know, operational security. But what you can have is methods that are less and less accessible, or less and less counterable to these people that are always on the radar. so best example I would give is a movement, propaganda, putting out information that's unassailable about something that they don't want known. There's ways they can counter that, but there's only so much they can do infiltrating a group that's saying, hey, we found this stuff out, we're going to put it out, we're going to talk about it. That doesn't help them a great deal. They do spend a lot of their time and energy on doing things that, could potentially have a negative effect, but don't always in practice. A lot of the people, on the other side are just as, unsure of themselves as we are, just as haphazard as we are. A lot of them do make money, a lot of them do work formally for corporations or governments, but even within those sectors, you have a lot of people just talking out of their ass, creating frameworks for counter-activism that don't really work that well because it's in their interest to do so. It's in their interest to go to a company or their government employer and say, oh, we figured out a great way to disrupt all these activists. And then they got to do something and get paid for it and may not work. I've had to spend a lot of time kind of dealing with these organizations, with the HB Gary, which came after me, even after they were sort of surveilling us, kind of took some more active measures against me throughout 2011. I've dealt with the FBI quite a bit, obviously. And just my general impression is that, you use, best procedures, whatever you can, but don't let the concern about counter surveillance and counter activity, don't let it deter you from doing things that will work and can be done quickly and that can't really be easily countered. Just make sure you have a proper weight given to what do we need to do rather than what are they going to find out and how could they potentially counter us.
Now you worked a little bit with Sabu, well, so you can't even really trust 100% people you're working with, correct?
Absolutely not, and you never can. And the thing with that particular time was there was lots of accusations of people. Oh, you're with the CIA, you're with the FBI. I was accused of working with the CIA a number of times, by random people anonymous. So, Sabu was one of those people who was accused a couple times at least of being of having been turned. The problem was that so many other people had also been accused of that same thing. That those accusations they get watered down, they get less effective. That's the unfortunate part about there's people who, all of us really don't necessarily have formal background in this sort of thing. We're kind of improvising. So within that group of people, there's a lot of people who, are very quick and easy to make accusations about government infiltration. And that makes it harder to actually identify the actual government infiltrators. But Sabu, Sabu was someone who, the other problem with that is that LulzSec and AntiSec, the kind of things they were doing that really did come back to damage the movement and make it harder to defend. Those are the kind of things that a lot of these guys were doing anyway, even without the FBI running them. That was a shame, is that there was a lot of people who lost sight of the fact that we have to be superior morally to our opposition, and that there's nothing to be said for attacking random civilians because it's fun or just doing things to keep attention. That this can be an actual movement, and to the extent that we actually take it seriously, and to the extent that we evaluate our actions and make sure that we're not doing the same kind of things that we would attack our enemies for, we would criticize our enemies for, that we will have natural advantages both morally and practically. And that's a more important thing to keep in mind. That's a more important thing to keep at the forefront of your mind than the damage that can and has been done by these contractors and government agents. We can destroy ourselves much faster than they can.
I'd like to talk a little bit about Project PM. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And are you still working on that?
Yeah, Project PM was started back in 2009. Wasn't really involved with Anonymous at that time. I recruited a number of academics, some other journalists, bloggers, and just random people, college students and all that, to create this system whereby, first of all, bloggers and journalists could better share information and better evaluate information to make sure it's actually true. Using something that's kind of ticking off on what Reddit used to be. Reddit back in the day was a great source of information. You had people submitting articles, and there's a lot. The population at Reddit was very high end, very capable, very erudite, and so someone submits an article, and there are people there from all different fields who can comment and say, hey, this is incorrect, here's a link to this, or here's something else. and those tend to get voted to the top. So you can quickly go to Reddit and really get a better picture of how things are or what something means than you could anywhere else. Most journalism involves a journalist who's not an expert in the field and an editor who is not an expert in the field. They're going to sources who they can't necessarily evaluate if the sources are right or wrong. Reddit was very early version of crowdsourced journalism. It wasn't called that. It wasn't always that, but it did manifest that. So we were trying to figure out how can we build something that's like Reddit in that sense, but will maintain its high level of contributorship over time, even as it grows. As in, how can we solve the problem of when more and more people hear about it, and as generally happens, the more and more people tend out to be perhaps of lesser credibility than the original sort of early adapter types that use it. How can we make that matter less? How can we make it so that people can still come in and contribute after the fact and still have a chance to have their input evaluated, but have it not overwhelm the system with lots of nonsense, which is what Reddit sort of became in a lot of ways. And so Project PM came and then it turned into something else. When I got involved with Anonymous and the HP Dairy contracting thing happened, Project PM turned into a very specific project to evaluate the intelligence contracting industry using the HP Dairy emails and other sources. And so we adapted it to a very specific purpose, because that's what happened to come up in 2011. We happened to get into a conflict with these contractors. The government was not going to rein them in. We were targeted by them. Other actors were targeted by them. The media was not capable of following up on this sufficiently. So that's what we did. We created the Echelon 2 site, compiled this information, made it available to journalists so that they could get a handle on this issue. And now the Pursuance project I'm speaking about, that's really the latest. That's the final kind of manifestation of all this. This is what we were trying to do in the first place before things took off. I got involved with Anonymous and got distracted. This was the original purpose, was to create something that could expand perpetually and grow to be a significant force in world affairs, and be resistant to those problems that always develop when something gains power, something that can kind of be self-correcting. And this is our best guess at what that would look like.
Cool. Sorry to cut in, mate. We just had a question.
Sorry?
From Jody Ladd. He said, what's Barrett's feelings or thoughts on Jeremy Hammond and the difficulties that he had in prison, the privileges taken away at the time?
Yeah, that's very common, especially with people like Jeremy Hammond and myself. I mean, I did about 6 months in the SHU out of 4 years in prison. Jeremy Hammond, I think, has done a similar ratio of time in the SHU. He is someone who was an actual revolutionary who is now, subject to federal prison culture, and he, like a lot of people of that nature, are going to get in trouble. They're going to get retaliated against. They're going to get thrown in the SHU. The way that things are in this country is such that even when we can document that we've been thrown in the SHU illegally, in retaliation for doing interviews and that such, nothing is done about it. That's the nature of this country. So he, again, Jeremy Hammond is a resilient person who was very well adapted to this lifestyle, and he, will come out of this with more, a larger degree of influence. He'll be able to better, he'll be able to operate more cogently, more effectively, now that he's sort of made his reputation, learned these lessons, toughen himself up like we all do when we go to prison, and it'll all be worth it in the end, I imagine.
So how would you suggest is the best way to verify information and stuff? Because there's a lot of false news, there's a lot of false information, just ridiculous stuff going on. So I mean,
there's no silver bullet to the problem of how do you decide what is correct. It's always a matter of degree, and we've seen some things that have worked better than the standard practice. Standard practice in journalism has been from the very beginning. There is a guy who writes for things and he gets paid money, and his career is not necessarily advanced because he's right, but rather because whatever he contributes, an editor likes and people like to read. And so that's the big problem with journalism. And so to different extents, you see different outlets do a better or worse job at getting things correct than others. And to the extent that you're covered by the press, I was a press critic. I worked in the press for a long time. A lot of my work towards the end there was about how the media fails us and why. And then I had the opportunity to be written about quite a bit, so I could see articles about me that I knew for a fact what was correct and what was incorrect. And I could see which errors that were kind of accidental were then repeated, copied off of by the journalists. So that's something that's always interested me. The answer to that question, I say the best practice, the best way to ensure that what we're looking at is more likely correct than not, is this crowdsourcing effort, where we have a lot of people with different backgrounds who have been picked, because they have a record of getting things correct and or being honest and being open to, really wanting to know these things, and then having them be able to evaluate a particular item or a fact or a story, and then sort of collating from there. So what that exactly looks like in practice can take many different forms. There's a sort of another document that's not on the website yet that shows how, for instance, a pursuance that's involved in crowdsourcing would work. Like, journalists could create a pursuance because they want to better evaluate what's going on. They want to know, they want to receive tips that would not normally be available to them, simply because it's very hard for one single person to stay up on issues that may be important but not necessarily visible. And so a journalist could create, using this system, a pursuance in which they've created the pursuance. They have maybe one or two people that they trust under them, and those two people can bring on people under them, and so on. And everyone's sending up information. And to the extent the information doesn't really pass the bar at the next level up, it won't get pushed through. And so you have a filter system from that. Now, there's problems with that. One is that you may have a large system in which there's people at the bottom who really do know what's going on and have good submissions, but the people above, as always happens in human organization, don't realize it. They're just lesser people than the ones below them. In that case, there's a couple of workarounds we have. One of which is that most pursuances by default, whatever it's working on, whether it's informational based or action based, everyone who joins a pursuance has the right to, at least at one point, send a document or message or whatever straight to the top. And if that person straight to the top likes it and thinks, yes, this is actually valid, then he may give that person the ability to repeat that. So that helps to work around the cumbersomeness that evolves when you have a large structure. There's other little tools that really aren't worth going into here at length, but some of which we've discussed in that main document at pursuanceproject.org, some of which we're still working out and will be presented later. But the bottom line is that crowdsourced journalism is something that we're still in the early days on understanding the best way to do it. One of the points of the pursuance system is to give people the tools to do it very efficiently, to do it easily, and to see what works, and to submit those ideas to this central sort of library so other people can evaluate and see, oh yeah, this worked, and we're going to try that as well. We're going to use the same structure, the same set of tools, and then maybe perhaps even improve on that and submit it. So this will be a self-evolving system in all respects, not just in the sense that there's pursuances out there efficiently addressing certain causes, just like organs efficiently do certain things, and then link with other organs, let's say, in order to create a larger whole, but also in the sense that each of these activities, each of these goals that are approached by different ways, by different pursuances, everyone will have a chance to see what's worked best and to evaluate themselves and to use those same procedures.
Hey, dude, I was going to ask you what your take was on Aaron Schwartz, because he was a legend, wasn't he? So I just wanted to know what you wanted, your time with him and stuff.
Aaron Schwartz, I never met him. I spoke to him a couple times, just real briefly over work stuff. He was doing a lot of FOIA requests in addition to everything else he was doing back then. And he did a couple of. He helped us. He filed some FOIA requests on persona management, which we were talking about earlier. One of those capabilities that we uncovered in the H.B. Gary emails that the military, intelligence community uses to infiltrate groups and manufacture events. He had filed some FOIA requests for us. I think I talked to him another time about something else I can't recall. And then while I was in prison when I heard that he had committed suicide, in the face of 30 years. And again, very similar situation. You have prosecutors who don't really have a crime they can really charge him with, but will use an existing statute to, with the compliant FBI to charge him with decades worth of crimes, to force him to plead to a deal, to accept one crime that he didn't commit. And that's how it works in the U.S. They charge you with 50 years worth of crimes. They threaten to indict your female loved ones, which they did in my case. They indicted my mother. They wanted me to cooperate with them. And then, you are put in a position where you're facing life in prison, or you can do 3 years in prison as long as you go along with what they want. So that was one of the great tragedies of the information age. That was somebody who had very selflessly put his genius into the service of humanity, and who was punished for it by people much lesser than him. And all we can say from that is that we have to make the most of that. We have to continually point to that, because on a lesser scale, that kind of thing happens every day. It's not usually geniuses. It's not usually guys who really, but people, human beings who have done nothing wrong, are forced in these situations every single day by the U.S. government in a way that's very unusual, in the Western world. And that will continue until such time as there's given reason not to do that.
So I don't know. Even all the new fags know who he is, man. His name is Legend, so let his name live on, innit?
Yeah,
So I didn't hear the name. Say again.
I said Aaron will always be a legend. Or I said new fags all know who he is, and his name lives on.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're seeing Lloyd Love being, the U.S. trying to extradite him. You're seeing England accept that, even though the case has been correctly made that the U.S. cannot grant a fair trial to anyone involved in information activism, and that the U.S. cannot, in a civilized fashion, incarcerate someone, especially someone who has emotional problems. They are not equipped to do that. They don't do it. They don't care. They throw people in the hole, routinely for little or no cause, sometimes in retaliation. We've documented that a number of times. We've documented how prosecutors operate here. We've documented the extent to which, even when cases are acknowledged by the state to have been handled incorrectly, as in even when prosecutors have withheld evidence and committed other grievances against the accused, even when that's caught out, they do not suffer any consequences. All of that should be enough to convince the English courts that it is incorrect for a civilized country, or a country that aspires to be civilized, to extradite anyone at all to the U.S.
So I want to get to the prison system and that. But first, as far as journalism goes,
Marky, you sounded like Tom Hader again.
Yeah. How do we protect ourselves against biasm? Because everybody has their own views and perspectives and stuff, and their biasm. So
there's no silver bullet. That's something that every individual it has to take responsibility for themselves, to first start out saying that I want to actually know what the answer is, so that I can be best equipped to do what is right. And that requires a lot of self-doubt. It requires it requires making sure that you're aware of all the opposing arguments and are actually paying attention to the arguments, not just reacting to them emotionally. There's been a lot of studies in the last few years showing how it does seem to be having more among conservatives by definition, but that there is a tendency that we've shown in laboratory settings for people to draw back into their pre-existing opinion, even when facts are presented to them that don't uphold that. And that's a human tendency. There's no reason to expect otherwise. We did not evolve to be intellectually honest people of civic virtue. We evolved to advance our own agenda at whatever cost to others, and that's what history has shown us. So it's a moral requirement that anyone who wants to make a difference, a positive difference, has to be aware of every day. To what extent have I, maybe meaning well, to what extent have I just accepted things because I want to accept them? To what extent have I refused to evaluate things that might have shown my own actions in a poor light? To what extent am I more emotionally, unconsciously interested in self justification than I am in actually determining the correct answer? And so there's really nothing, either you have those inclinations, either you really do wants to be a person who does that, or you don't. And that's something that I think maybe by example can be manipulated, but beyond that, that's something that will never be solved.
That's a very good answer. Thank you. So do you mind moving on to the prison system and the justice system and stuff like that?
Sure.
We have a lot of political prisoners. What kind of abuses have you dealt with? I mean, a lot of us know what you've gone through. Can you tell our audience?
Yep. Some of the things that I was subjected to or seen others subjected to in the prison system, I wrote about in the columns for The Intercept and for D Magazine, although I tended to keep those light and humorous because that's the best way of reaching people. So I didn't go into a lot of the sort of darker aspects of it. But really, I mean, what I presented is basically the whole of it for the most part. It just comes down to every day you are subject to a absence of the rule of law, perpetrated by a system that justifies its existence on the idea that it does embody the rule of law. There are all kinds of rights that you allegedly have under the BOP's guidelines and under the Constitution, which in practice do not apply, largely because the citizenry has not taken responsibility for its own institutions. Because even when these abuses are uncovered, it doesn't lead to anything. It doesn't lead to Congress getting outraged and saying, "Oh, I can't believe we're doing this. Let's stop it." It doesn't usually work that way. There was a law passed in 1996 called the Prison Litigation Reform Act, and what this did was it made it much harder for prisoners to challenge terms of their confinement, to challenge abuses by prison staff in courts. In order to do that, they now had to go through this long process called the grievance process or administrative remedy process, depending on if you're in state or federal prisons. It involves writing up your grievance on a form and submitting it to the prison, the same prison that you're trying to sue. And they get to look at that thing, and they get you to sign another form and fill that out and attach documents and mail it somewhere else. And even if you do manage to do that within the deadline, in my case, for instance, as I documented in the Intercept columns, when my email was taken away illicitly after I used it to inform a journalist about abuses by the Bureau of Prisons, what they will do is they will respond to your letter from the regional office, and they'll say, "Oh, you have to send these other materials, and you have by this date to do them." But the letter that you sent you will arrive 30 days late, so you actually have negative 15 days to mail back these new materials. That happened to me twice. Once when I had negative 1 days, once when I had negative 15 days. I published all those documents on the Intercept column, and the important thing about it, that is that, ever since I started out as a journalist, when I was like 19, 20, I always thought that maybe when I have a larger audience, maybe when I write for something that's well read among other journalists, maybe I'll actually have a chance to actually drive change. And the fact is, that's not true. A lot of journalists read The Intercept. I won the National Magazine Award for commentary for that column, but nothing I wrote in there made any difference whatsoever. And that's why.
We got the viewers saying we got really bad feedback. So can everyone check the devices? Sorry about that, Barrett, because everyone's complaining.
Sorry, say it again?
Go. People are complaining that we got really bad feedback.
Oh, yeah. Could be.
So I'm just saying, can everyone check the devices because someone's got an echo.
Mute the mics.
So, yeah, just mute the mics if you're not talking. Should take care of it.
So the bottom line is that, there's a great deal of injustice and actual criminality that goes on within the prison systems in this country, especially. And the population within the prison is, of course, has effectively no rights whatsoever. Legally, it has rights under the Constitution, but those rights cannot be enforced most of the time because of the way that Congress has restricted their ability to access the courts. That's in addition from being forbidden from voting. Like I myself am not allowed to vote in this republic, having been a felon. That same thing applies to people who have been charged and convicted under a marijuana conspiracy, for instance. So this democracy applies to everyone except for those who it doesn't apply to, and that includes people who may have helped sell marijuana at some point, which itself is a larger lesson about what this democracy actually is. It's not a democracy. It's a partial democracy at its best. Anyway, so there's very little to be done about these issues involving prison abuses. They're very pervasive. Some of the things are unbelievable that I've seen and heard about. Even someone like myself who had an actual, a voice, a megaphone, a column that was read by, other journalists and politicians. Even when I went to the trouble of documenting as much as I could from their own files about what they do, it just didn't matter. And that's why, there has to be that's why those of us who do concern ourselves with these issues and believe we have a duty to address them, that's why we have to step up our game and make sure that everything we're doing is vastly efficient in relation to the problems that we're faced with.
So what do you have to say? What do you have to say to the people out here listening? I mean, as far as activism and actually working to make a difference.
Again, I would say that this pursuance system we're rolling out, this is one answer to this larger problem of is what we're doing efficient enough? Are there better ways we can do it? We're very early on in the information age. We've very just recently, in a historical sense, come to the point where anyone can theoretically collaborate with anyone else. That has to be the central idea of all of this, that we now have that ability. We haven't yet learned to use it in the ways that we potentially use it. And to the extent that we address that first, everything else will come from there. Everything else will become easier to the extent that we maximize what our advantage is. Our advantage is that we are a large number of people throughout the world who happen to believe in freedom, who happen to oppose injustice, who don't believe in going along with the system for our own advantage, who believe that we have a duty, really to the memories of the people who came before us, people who came last several hundred years, who have fought and sacrificed more than any of us ever will have in order to give us the rights that we enjoy today. Emmett Goldman, 100 years ago, Russian Jewish anarchist immigrants to the U.S., went to jail probably well over a dozen times for doing things like passing out information on birth control. And so the question everyone has to ask themselves is, have I done my part to give back to human civilization the things that I have received from the people who came before us? And what is my part involved? And again, I would always say that your part involves first making absolutely sure what you're doing is just, and thereafter doing as much as you can to determine what is the most efficient way of acting at any given point. It's not about us enjoying ourselves or feeling a degree of power or satisfaction. That those are things that we'll always have because we're mammals. But it comes down to every individual has to decide, is this the best way? Is there another way that I'm avoiding because I'm concerned about my own, livelihood? I don't mean to say that your job is to sacrifice yourself entirely, but it's all because there's no argument to be made to that effect. There's no one who could say, this is exactly what you're required to do. This is what you're obligated to do. There's no answer to that. But you can keep in mind, you can look at examples that come in the past. You can look at people who have made huge sacrifices to enable what liberties we still enjoy, and then get with the business of determining how this is best accomplished. And again, the big question has to be, how do we organize these actions? How do we bring more people into this mentality? How do we incorporate them? How do we ensure they'll stay? how do we ensure that everything we do is maximized and is sustainable and will grow in a way that will remain, true to its ideals. And those are things that can be done and are being done right now. And so more specifically, I would just say, please stay current with what we're doing with the pursuance system. Keep an eye on it. Start thinking about what you would like. If you have an idea or if there's a passion you have, how would you best implement it if you knew that you could work with a bunch of people, carte blanche, very securely? What ideas that might not have worked in Anonymous that might work now? How would you build a structure with the sole purpose of accomplishing some particular goal? What would it look like? How would it best be organized? And that's the whole of it right there. Beyond that, it's all specifics. It's all kind of situational issues. But that's the grand part of this is to look at your own role in history and decide what it's going to be. Decide if you're going to be someone who participates a little bit and spreads information, which is totally fine, or if you're going to be someone who is going to spend an active part of your life combating the system that is unsustainable and will lead us all over a cliff eventually.
So there's literally like tons of good efforts, like literally almost anything you can imagine that's morally good that's going to help and benefit, the people and the planet and the life on this planet.
Yeah, Barrett, what's your take on terror? What's your take on the terror scene? Do you think the government are behind ISIS? Or?
No, not as such. I mean, obviously, in the past, the U.S. government and other governments have worked with organizations they later designated as terrorists. And the best example is the U.S. working with Afghanistani Muslim radicals against the Soviet Union in the 80s and afterwards, and then kind of losing control of that. You always have Cubans who would be considered terrorists anywhere else, obviously, made up a large component of the sort of reactionary conspiracies in the 60s against Kennedy and against whatever U.S. policy didn't jive with them. The CIA became an active and evolving conspiracy shortly after it was created. It existed like that for a long period of time. Terrorism obviously is a designation that's very subjective and tends not to apply to one's allies. The U.S. has a great long history in Latin America, supporting groups that do the very same things that they now oppose, sort of on a whim elsewhere. We have trained terrorists, we have used terrorists to our own ends, and that'll probably continue forever. But no, and there are certain cases in which, there's still issues that are not properly understood by the public at large that are deemed as conspiracy theories. And again, that's to be expected. We have a pretty good understanding of how people in the Pentagon and national security community in the past have viewed their pragmatic options. We've seen attempts to perpetuate false flags or to re-describe incidents that kind of happened and portray them as something else in order to achieve an end, in order to create a pretext for war. It happened in the Gulf of Tonkin incident, the U.S. and Vietnam. We've seen it planned in the early 60s, Operation Northwoods, in which one of the Joint Chiefs of Staff proposed to Kennedy that they blow up airliners and blame it on the Cubans. That was not implemented. It was rejected, but the person who proposed killing U.S. citizens and blaming it on another country and lying to the public, was not fired or prosecuted. He was, later, got a promotion after Kennedy was dead. So we have a lot of that throughout human history. It's very common. I mean, it works. It makes sense to deceive people and to attribute actions to their enemies in order to justify actions against the enemies. People do it for different reasons. Sometimes their reasons are they believe to be morally sound. Sometimes they believe, sometimes it's for more baser reasons, but that'll always be with us. And it's just one of those things that's kind of hard to work out sometimes because the nature of these things is it's very difficult to determine which incidents are actual incidents that look that are what they look like on their face, and which ones are something a little bit more nuanced, something more complicated. I would advise against dwelling on all of that, simply because unless there's smoking gun evidence that can be used to convince large numbers of people, particularly in the press, that this was something else than what it looked like, there's not much to be gained from pursuing it. It's just one of those things. It's one of those costs of doing business. It's something that will happen, and like all things, may not ever be addressed in a just and honest way. It's kind of above and apart from a lot of the stuff that we do. I mean, these things will go on, and always, bringing attention to things that we feel are, true, and reevaluating them and making our own case for them is always important. But it does eventually come down to creating our own engines of activity, rather than dwelling on, the huge and just multifaceted injustices and falsehoods perpetuated by states.
Well, it seems like it's the same over and over again. Like what we're doing in Syria now, from my understanding, is basically training the rebels to overthrow the regime, and planes and stuff that are nice, just like Syrian planes. And
well, it's always
I don't know.
Yeah, you always have different viewpoints within the Pentagon, within the intelligence community. You have viewpoints changing over time as personnel are replaced. You have. It's one of those things where there's not a single cogent agenda. I don't think in Syria, for instance. I think it's something that again evolves over time. Even an individual person who has a position in the Pentagon, for instance, to control our activity there, he himself may not have a whole entirely cogent singular framework. He himself may be subject to all kinds of whims and changes of opinion. And then beyond that, there are a lot of people who, within the government framework, believe they have control over a situation and actually don't. That's happened over and over again. So that's why these things tend to work out badly, because there are a lot of people in the intelligence community, the military, who think more highly of their own capabilities than is actually warranted. And they start off on one path, and then it turns out that people they're working with, who almost by definition tend to be also kind of skull and dagger people, have their own agendas. And so you have a very confused amalgamation of different people's purposes. And it becomes very, very hard to evaluate. That's why I don't spend a lot of time trying to figure out exactly what the different agendas are in Syria, for instance, because it's very, I can tell you as someone who has been involved in sort of open source conspiracies and who's been reported on and who's seen FBI files and trying to evaluate me and what I'm doing, and was seeing articles and all that. Even people who are pretty good at assessing information don't tend to realize how difficult it really is to figure out what someone else is trying to do. There's just it's such a subjective process. It's very haphazard. There obviously, I don't mean to say there aren't cases in which the agenda is very clear, in which the activities are very clear. There's a number of examples of that, but especially now, especially these days, when there's so many, not just disinformation capabilities, but just poor journalism and poor clear thinking. It's always hard to know exactly who's conspiring to what ends and to what extent they're really in charge of the situation.
Yeah, indeed. I was going to say, what's your take on the false flag events, Barrett? Like Manchester bombings, Paris. Because after Paris happened, everyone was watching Paris, and they blacked out because Syria got attacked the same night, like thousands killed, because they reckoned they were going after ISIS. But ISIS weren't even in Syria. They just killed a load of civilians for nothing.
Yeah, it's always hard to be certain about whether or not a false flag has happened. Not always, but it usually is. Sometimes there are very open and shut cases where we can really actually see a lot of the moving parts and determine this is a false flag and here's who did it and here's why. Best example of a very easily understandable false flag event is 1999 in Russia with the apartment bombings in Moscow and Ryazan and elsewhere. That was an incident where the FSB didn't really have to do a very good job, because even if they got caught doing it, which they did, it just doesn't matter to the majority of Russians. And so even when the FSB agents got caught having that same explosive material in an apartment in Ryazan, and then claimed that there was just an exercise, that they were doing a test of the local security forces, even though they had rented that apartment out months before the bombings had happened, and it started, and et cetera, so on and so forth. That got covered a little bit by foreign newspapers and local journalists like Anna Politskaya, who was later assassinated in Russia. It was something that was it was known about by a lot of well-connected people back then, even some journalists in elsewhere in Europe who knew that there was going to be a false flag series of events by which to justify an incursion into Chechnya and boost Putin's support. That's a very good example of a very easily delineated false flag. And there are other examples where we have we know that the official story is less than cogent and is either has not been properly ascertained or has been actively obscured by whoever parties. But then it gets more complicated, because it's you see a lot of good evidence, a lot of good cases that someone has tried to throw sand in our eyes over an event that they haven't. That there's investigations that are clearly being done improperly, and that's happened a lot in U.S. history. I'm not going to go into a lot of examples here, but probably because I have not yet got a chance to see some of the things I would want to see to have a strong opinion one way or the other. So, but the bottom line is that any journalist, particularly in the U.S., who responds to accusations of a false flag by saying, "Oh, that's ridiculous. It's not even worth looking into," is obviously wrong, because we have a well-documented history in 20th century, in particular, of false flag operations. And I think it's even more bizarre than that. We have whole periods of active conspiracy. We have the Soviet Union, for instance. We have Nazi Germany, in which every day was a false flag in a way, in which every war that was conducted was done with a false pretext.
9/11 was conspiracy.
Well, 9/11, the report is obviously questionable. It's does not do what it's supposed to do. It does not address a lot of the questions that were posed to them, and the people involved. I forget the name of the two heads of it. It's hard to say what exactly their relationship would have been to any conspirators. It's also hard to say to what extent, what different parties were involved, and whether or not all the parties involved knew the agenda of the other parties. But yes, I mean, there's a great deal wrong, frankly, with that report and with the sort of media narrative. There were things that came up that sort of appeared in the press the next few months that then sort of got forgotten about, which is very common. And it's never got addressed. And so the environment we live in is such that, to the extent that a major false flag attack happens, it's very unlikely to be acknowledged by the general public.
That's true.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
The thing that I think a lot of people miss, for those who just tuning in, I'm Jim Lee, climateviewer.com. The thing that most people miss about false flags, and I think this is a common misconception, is that like they'll say, well, Sandy Hook was a false flag, and then by definition that means that nobody was actually shot. Like it was all false. Like the whole damn thing's pretend. And I think that a lot of people really get confused on that there can actually be a shooting and it can be a false flag. Not like this is all a movie set and everything is hocus fucking pocus, like the moon landing. Do you agree with that?
Well, absolutely. Not that instance itself, like, the main proponent of Sandy Hook being a false flag was Alex Jones, and he originally, said it was all made up. Then he kind of backed off it. So, I mean, I have never seen anything that would really indicate that this was something government involved. I mean, this is America. People shoot each other. People are crazy and go out and kill people. It happens a lot. We can document that. So I have no reason to believe that itself was not a real incident. Having said that, we would not really know if it wasn't, because again, there's no process in place within the press itself that is capable of asking those questions. Most journalists work off of heuristics. They have an idea of what a conspiracy theory is. If they hear something that doesn't make sense, if there's somebody out there who's actually loony and saying, "Oh, interdimensional lizards blew this up," and then someone else is saying, "Well, there's some questions about this, this, and this," they conflate the two subjects, and suddenly the person who's just bringing up reasonable questions about a particular incident is entirely discredited by proxy. That's not how it's supposed to work. I used to write for Skeptic Magazine, Skeptical Inquirer. I'm very well, acquainted with the procedures one can use to kind of like assess things. I mean, to the extent those exist. I'm sure my way of doing it, but
I'd like to point out a real simple one. And this has been one of the most beneficial things for me personally as a researcher, as an activist, and as a critical thinker. And I got fooled on the internet, and I'm sure that a lot of people in the audience have been fooled by some bullshit on the internet at some point. And I had to ask myself, how did this happen? And it turns out that everybody's talking about mind control weapons and targeted individuals and all this crazy shit on the internet, but really it boiled down to words, and words are very powerful mind control weapons. And I had to ask myself, well, what are these words and how did this happen? And it's very simple. There's something called
You got trolled.
slave speak.
Yeah.
And slave speak is language that maintains a master-slave relationship. And basically it goes like this. If a person uses a high-level descriptor, something that you cannot hold in your hand, touch, taste, feel, apple, orange is a low-level descriptor. If I say apple or orange, everybody on this panel, as long as you're an English speaker, knows what the fuck I'm talking about. If I say God, government, good, evil, we can all have an argument about what these words mean. So generally speaking, if a person you are talking to or reading their shit on the internet, if they use a high-level descriptor, you simply have to ask yourself, what is the definition of this word, and or demand it from the person you're speaking to. If they do not give you a definition that is in low-level descriptor format that resonates in your belly as true, ask for another definition. If a person cannot explain a thing simply enough, they do not understand it well enough, or they are trying to manipulate you.
Yeah, most likely the first case. Most likely they don't understand it themselves.
So it's usually that L. Ron Hubbard techniques on how to lie and control, right? Yeah. So, I've got an article about this. It was written by Frederick Mann. He gave me copyright permission to repost it on climateviewer.com. It's on the sidebar, and it's called The Anatomy of Slave Speak. I suggest everybody read it, because after I read it, I went back and I reread my own articles and realized that I was full of shit on a couple things.
You just explained the trolling. It's a higher level of troll. It sounds like you got trolled, man.
Yeah,
I troll people like that. I'm really highly
I've been trolled. I've been trolled myself. But yeah, I was specifically talking about like Comet Elenin. Like I believe this comet of doom was going to blow up the whole fucking planet and scare my family and everything. And I'm a pretty smart guy, I'm taught myself to code, taught myself graphics and everything. How the hell did I get played like this? And the trick is that they use just enough bags.
Could have been the fact that you maybe had a few days you hadn't slept, or you've been feeling, because I seem to get trolled worse when I'm not at my most perspective. And I've had like a bad time, I'm depressed and I'm feeling ill. That's when I seem to be weak.
Yeah, that goes back to gaslighting and neuro-linguistic programming techniques.
Oh yeah, and that's what. No, let's take it full circle, because I took a break. But when we were first talking, we were talking about H.B. Gary, Palantir, and Barrico, and what did he say? Spread fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That is it. That is the basis of MK Ultra.
So I got to cut in, but you got to realize, Anonymous, we started as trolls.
Yeah, we were. I know the 4chan history, baby. The pool is fucking closed, brother, man. I know, man. I was fucking hanging out at the pool, motherfucker. I mean, seriously, I has popcorns. We'll eat cheeseburgers. So I know, dude. You just don't get me started, Brian.
Hey, now let me add one thing about Sandy Hook. Now, defining an incident. Let's say you believe the official story that there was kids killed there. Why, years later in FBI reports, are there no deaths in that county for that year? You know, can you really have it both ways? You know, that would be that's a.
See, that's the thing about follow-up. Nobody does that kind of stuff. And me personally, I'm gonna claim ignorance. Now, generally speaking, I try to my website. The theory, the slogan is where conspiracy meets reality. So I take conspiracies that I can prove in a court of law, and I try to make a difference about them. One of which happens to be weather control, weather modification, HARP. You know, anything that has to do with modifying the sky. I am writing legislation to make that shit go away.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about HARP for a bit.
Oh God, don't please! I'll hijack the whole fucking show. This is not about me. This is
I
about
wanted to
Barrett.
know your take on
We'll do that
hurricanes.
another day, man. Seriously, climateviewer.com/HARP. Huh? I know more about legislation than maggots or anybody on the planet, dude.
Well, we got a question from the audience here, more specifically for Barrett, but I guess we could discuss in general. And it's, do you believe that we can get real change out of the system? You know, both with legislation and whistleblowing, or is it going to take something like an actual physical revolt?
Those are the only two options. There's a third option that involves less physical revolt and more of subversion of people's loyalties. It involves, by example, showing that there is a way to diminish the power of the state and to marginalize it and to eventually build up parallel structures that can challenge it and co-opt its moral authority, and that as such a violent revolt would not be necessary. But no, I don't think the first thing is possible. I don't think that reform and legislation is going to work because, again, the population in this country, for the most part, does not take its duties seriously. And so the idea of democracy is based on this idea that you have a learned and moral constituency, which anyone who, of course, every politician in this country has to pretend that the American people are fantastic, moral, very brave, right-thinking people. Whereas actual studies of like what people know or think, tend to discredit that. As in, most American voters don't know, can't name the past couple Secretary of States, they, et cetera, et cetera. So, no, I don't think that. And first of all, I'm not a believer in democracy. I'm not a believer in the idea that the majority has the right to do whatever it wants. And beyond that, I'm also not a believer in constitutional republic. Even if you have a constitution that's put in place, even if it's a very good constitution, we have a constitutional republic. We also have a country in which some 40, 50 million people at least are technically criminals because of the laws we put in place under that constitution. We have a constitutional police state. So there does become a divide between advocating actual, real individual liberty and advocating the right of a group of people 300 years ago to create a document that will govern us forever. And I happen not to subscribe to any of those beliefs. I happen to, my own agenda is individual liberty, regardless of what that entails.
Well, there is no individual liberty in America. If you don't have running power and running water in your house and you have kids, the government will come take your fucking kids away, period. So you have to pay the taxes on that house. You have to pay, which means you have to work. There is no freedom. If you tried to move your ass to the woods with those kids, and God forbid you didn't give them their fucking vaccine, they will take your kids. They will throw your ass in jail. There is no freedom in America. That being said, go ahead.
When you start down that road of a state that governs in accordance with the welfare of the community, that can be interpreted in many different ways, and it results in these problems. It results in these problems where, oftentimes they'll do things that most of us would agree are helpful, but then oftentimes beyond that, you'll start having things that end up being very deleterious. And the drug war is the best example. The drug war, is justified as something that's necessary, and that we have the right as a republic to erode all of our other rights in order to prevent us from things subject to drugs. And in the process of that, we destroy families and destroy individuals and innate enable mafias and enable rogue intelligence, and this is what we have. So it's all the same issue. It's what is the right of a group of people to set up a framework whereby majority votes, or even close to majority votes, or some system of voting justifies anything it's done.
I don't think that. I think that at the end of the day, they said that if we didn't have a well-educated populace, that a revolution would be necessary every 50 years, and we haven't had one for 200. And I think that we're well past having, a violent armed revolution. I don't think that that's going to be even necessary either, because I think that we're kind of in the movie for V for Vendetta, like where the two people are sitting on the couch. They just said on the news that they blew up the tower themselves, and the two people look at each other like, we know they're lying. I saw it happen with my own eyes. So that we're in that fake news universe that we saw in V for Vendetta, and what happened right afterwards. I mean, all it takes now is for people to just get up off their ass and go in the street. The problem is,
I think we're at a time now where things are changing. I think David Rockefeller dying was a big hit for the elite, and I think that's why there's been a lot of events recently with false flags, because of him going. They're trying to speed it up. They're trying to speed up martial law. They're trying to, because in Britain we had a Operation Tempera after Manchester, and it's like a martial law around London. There was like 5,000 police officers deployed around England because we were apparently on critical alert.
Yeah. Well, I think that's something that most people don't know about, and it really affects what y'all are talking about, is that there's this thing called sunspots and mass excitability, or how the grand solar minimum and solar maximum affects every brain of every person on the planet. And it goes a little something like this. This guy back in the 60s named Andrew Shizvesky came up with this idea that every major revolution in history coincided with a solar maximum. Coincidentally, that happened around 2013. So from 2011 up to the peak in around 2013, that's why everybody was losing their shit on the internet. That's why it was so intense. There were so many people on the internet. Actually, you can go look statistically at the volume of people per hour. It's kind of nuts. Well, anyway, we're now in a downswing. So basically, he characterizes it like this. There is 3 years of people losing their shit and a high probability of revolution worldwide, followed by 3 years of decline and 3 years of passivity, and then followed by 3 years of increased energy. And then, bam, we're back into the next solar maximum. Guess what? That's around 2025. So these guys know right now, and unfortunately for all of the activists, and you guys have felt it, you'll know that what I'm about to tell you is true, that since 2013, things have started to die off. A lot of the guys that were very energetic have gone away. Many have wrapped up their fucking websites and gone to fapping and surfing. Tell me I'm wrong. Because it's the truth. So it's the truth. So since 2013, there's a lot of people who've gone back to fapping, because generally speaking, we are electrical. And since we are in this period, unfortunately, it's going to be like 2025 before we have the energy of the entire world at full volume again. So for me, I'm trying to prepare for that long-term journey. I'm building apps. I'm preparing tools for the future. So that's the way I look at it. You have to look at this as a marathon, not a race. And I think a lot of people are in it for that nyan-cat, just full speed every day, expecting results. And you have to expect that you may make a severe difference in your lifetime, or your child might. And if you at least make the goal of making sure that your child changes the world, then you probably will yourself.
So do you guys agree with what I said then about Rockefeller dying? Do you think it was a big impact in a good way?
I think it affects nothing, honestly. I mean, with guys like that, they protect their legacy. They have made sure that they have people who think like them, who are going to fill their shoes and get the whole, keep the race war going, dissolve the
but he
borders
was
at
the
any
kind of brain
cost.
behind. He was kind of the brain behind Rothschild and that, wasn't he? He was kind of the gangster of the elite, like.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I try not to focus on guys like that because at the end of the day, they're the richest people in the world. You think they don't want influence? Of course they do. So they're going to do everything they can to do it. And I read this thing, this Colin Powell email, DC leaks. Bohemian Grove is going to vote for Hillary Clinton. That's all I needed to know. Everything you need to know about Donald Trump and the entire fucking fake news media losing their shit, plus the deep state coming out full bore for Donald Trump, is contained in that one fucking email. The Bohemian Colin Powell, the Bohemian Grove
Trump needs to
is
build a
voting
wall
for
around his
Hillary
head.
Clinton. And Donald Trump was invited to the Bohemian Grove and never attended. What does that tell you? He's not part of the fucking club. So of course they hate him. And that's all I need to know. I don't need to know anything else. I'm just based on that leaked email. I trust that leaked email over.
He even tie his own shoelaces.
I don't give a fuck. He's the human hand grenade, bro. I wanted to see lulls, and I have them every day. It's very lulsy. So at the end of the day, what can you do with government? Break it. First of all, break it. You got to break it before you can build it back up. That's what they say in the military, right? And I've talked to NSA guys who interviewed me, like at the beach, about my map and shit. And I say to them, how do you feel about your, going in with this Boy Scout attitude and finding out that all this fuck shit's going on? And the guy told me, this is straight from an NSA guy's mouth. There are veterans in the NSA who are disgusted by what's going on, who are walking away from the job. And I'll say to them the same thing I say to all the immigrants that are coming here. The problem with you is that you're not willing to fight where you are. I know America's great, but the thing that's great about America is we fought and bled and died to make it what it is. And we need to fight and bleed and die to keep it the way it is in the future. But hopefully other people in other countries will see us and they'll go, enough with the dictators, and they will fight and bleed in their own land for their own thing. And then they will be like us, not come here to be with us, be like us.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's just not like that. You know what I mean? People aren't picking up the torch in their own land. And I hope that America, we will never have to go to that Civil War level again. I personally have my name, my address on my website because I'm going up to the EPA and testifying on C-SPAN. Fuck it. That's my way of now contributing, to each his own. But people have got to find a way to make a difference. And, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing's going to get better. It's not. Dr. Seuss. All right, that's all my moral fagging for the night, guys. I got to get a bed.
What you got to ask yourselves as well is why Israel hasn't been attacked, whereas Syria and the Middle East has been completely dismantled and destroyed. Why hasn't Israel been attacked? Why is Israel so special? And then it comes back to the elite and Zionism. That's what I believe. So,
last I heard, Israel gets all of the Stone Ghost Network data unfiltered, and that was on the Intercept. Glenn Greenwald.
Not by mean attacks. It never gets attacked, does it? I mean, you get Syria again completely destroyed. But it doesn't get attacked. Do you agree with me, Tom?
Yeah.
Is the stream still going? It seems like it's gone weird.
Oh yeah, it's still going.
Cool.
Cool.
What did he say? I got to dip out. I got to go to bed, is it?
No, we're good. We're good.
No, not me. The
Our guest?
Yeah. Is Sarah here?
Yeah.
Is Sarah here?
Yeah.
Tell her to unmute her mic. Talk.
Sarah?
Yeah. She had a few things she wanted to ask Barrett.
I did. You guys covered pretty much all of the topics. But is he even on the call still? I don't see him now.
It looks like we lost him.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it looks like something got dropped. Maybe not just him, because I'm only seeing 6. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7
Whoa.
arms there twice.
Yeah, we've been censored really bad. Have we been hacked? Oh no.
Okay.
No, we're not being censored.
No, she's right, Tyler. Loads of people have just dropped out all of a sudden.
Really?
Yes. And it was Loki, Barrett, and Sarah's gone as well.
Uh-oh.
It's only me and you here. What the fuck?
Uh-oh.
No, your stream looked good.
Yeah,
I just prayed you could get back on.
It looks like...
About 5 people just dropped out, Preston, including you.
Yeah, it looks like we're having some technical difficulties.
I did it on purpose so Sarah could get on.
Oh, that's sweet.
Say 10, 15 minutes ago.
Oh, this is crazy. I've never seen anything like this on the back end.
Why?
But the stream was looking good. I was watching for a while.
Did it come across well? Was the questions good press?
Yeah. I think we could dig into things a little bit more, but I mean, it's been a pretty intense couple hours.
Yeah.
I would have gotten more into like how the foreign intelligence, these FISA warrants and techniques for foreign intelligence and foreign conflicts is being used on us now. Try to tie that in somehow, but
I'm not sure if the cyber guy kind of bugged Barrett a little bit. It was overcrowding him. I'm not sure.
Well, he said he tried to get on if something happened.
Strange.
Strange.
Really strange. Can you talk to Barrett and see if we can get him back on?
You can try.
That was fucking weird. It's like everyone just cut out all at once. Even Loki. And he really wanted to be here, didn't he?
Oh yeah. I guess we'll just hop on to another subject. Another thing that was going on.
That's cool.
Yeah, that I was going to talk a little bit about was there's censorship going on the internet right now in relation to Egypt. You guys aware of that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard something about it. Preston,
Yeah.
You heard about it as well, didn't you?
Yeah.
What are they doing extra? They already had some.
Well, they're not only were they blocking major media sites. They were the local government was justifying it, saying that they were supporting terrorism, and it's gone even a little further than that. They were also blocking VPNs and Tor, from what I was reading. Now, anybody with a little technical know-how could get around that very easily, but okay, let me go contact him.
This what's the questions from the audience?
Let me see.
And we need to talk to Brown as well, get confirmation of what happened. That was a bit weird.
Now, this terminology he's using, this pursuance, is that he's just that term is used as like a topic that we're pursuing, right? I
don't know, man, but that other guy kind of fucking started saying to him, "Oh, you're stealing my project," and I'm not sure if that kind of pissed off Barrett because I don't know.
No, I think there are like minds. Ideas come to multiple people. You've seen that in discoveries and all. I mean, people in similar fields are seeing the same thing at the same time. I mean, he's been working on it a long time. I didn't take it like that. I was just trying to define his terminology. I just I took his this idea, this pursuance, to be a topic that we're pursuing via this crowdsourcing effort.
Oh, I don't know, man. Sounds weird. Are we still live? Yeah.
Yeah, we're still live. We're still live.
Fuck.
Well, what's new in the UK on Grenfell? Anything more?
Yeah,
It's
there
over
was-
100 people now. I mean,
Yeah, there was a huge march down in the UK today about that.
anything more on that,
There's been
Jake?
protests around the UK recently,
Yeah.
but there's still a lot of armed soldiers everywhere, so they haven't called it off yet. Fuck, they probably make it worse. I mean, there's been other attacks. Did you hear about a tower block building?
No, I haven't.
Went up in flames. I think it was 15, 16 people died, but I don't know. It's just all these little things are all happening, and then it's making people want more security, and that's exactly how martial law comes into play.
Oh, with
Yes, people
Operation
are-
Temperance.
Yeah, because the public ask for more protection because they're scared, and that plays right into the hands of them putting in martial law. We're basically telling them to give us martial law because these events are causing us to make the public frightened, and then they're implicating these temporary martial laws. But people are going to think, oh, wait there, while this martial law was happening, I felt safer and I felt good. Do you get what I mean? It's manipulation. So then they want it more permanently. Before we even realize it, we're going to be asking them to give us martial law on a full-blown basis. So,
Well, I think that's kind of the plan.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
That's
used
the
here
plan.
a lot.
Yeah, but we'll ask for it ourselves.
Not.
On Ghana.
I would say that they would.
Not me, you, Tyler, not me or you. Me or you. We're not.
No.
sheep.
I was going
We're
to say.
people.
Yeah, they're going to probably convince some of the public that that's the direction they want to go. But that's not what I'm hearing from what's going on in the streets. I hear a lot of pissed off people at the government right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
The Queen should demand it for her subjects. That'll solve it.
we always get this thing where people dip out, don't they? Without saying bye, and they just disappear.
Well, it looked like it. What it looked like is that we had a technical problem. Like,
Wait a sec.
no, I mean it could be. I mean, to be honest with you, it could have been a problem with Google.
No, but I was fine, and I normally play. I was playing up earlier, wasn't I? And I reset.
Well, remember we had that one issue where nobody could join the call, so very well likely we could be dealing with the technical error. Just not that many people get dropped out of a call at the same time.
Well, I heard that MeWe is going to have a live stream in about a month, 4 weeks, 6 weeks time. So-
Yeah, and that might be another avenue to go into, as far as streaming the show, if they allow their RTMP servers list openly available. There are a few sites that that would be like prime real estate that
We need to multi-stream now. We need to do a show like today, and then put it across the platform of Twitter, YouTube, Facebook.
Well, I looked into
MeWe
Instagram.
all at the same time.
I even looked into Instagram, and because Instagram has streaming services, but unfortunately, they won't let you stream from without the app. So they won't open up their RTMP IPs.
Oh, it's okay. We don't need Instagram. We got Twitter. We got YouTube Live. We got Facebook. If we could just put all the streams on at the same time, we'd have a really big reach. Like, we're doing okay, obviously, but we'd have bigger.
What happened to that Joycaster project? Or did it?
I've been using it off and on. I run into it has some issues. It cuts off every once in a while. There's another one called Restream that I've been looking into.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, it was really cool having Barrett on the show, and it looks like, from what I'm reading, we can't get hold of him. So, I don't think he'll be coming back. It was amazing what he had to give, and the stuff he told us and the audience. It was really cool. Do you guys?
Oh yeah, it was.
Agree with me? I was just saying it was really good to have Barrett on. It'd be nice to have him on again.
Oh yeah, definitely, for sure.
And another thing that we need to discuss, from what I'm seeing, is that we need to get big guests on a more regular basis now.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Been feeding.
Yeah.
But tonight we've spiked. We've spiked tonight.
Yeah, 100% a good show.
Yep. And I'm looking at it now. I'm looking at how many views.
It's
And
26.
compared to of late, it's a lot better.
Yeah.
It's still down, but it's a lot better. So just got to keep trying to get past the censorship. Something's at Preston, dude. We haven't changed, so we must be being censored by some sort of
That's
government.
not censorship. It's not censorship. It's what's going on here is it looks
Well,
like
of course it's censorship, pal. Because how the hell can we go from 20k views down to 2k views, 4k views? How can it drop so drastically when we were doing the same stuff?
in relation to the show, yeah. I not really positive about all of being censorship. Some of it's related to how Facebook announces live stream when it's already caught.
Yeah, they're censoring us because they're putting us to spam.
Copyrighted material. Yeah.
They're saying we're spam.
Who says that?
That's what's happening. We are being put out as spam, and that's why we are losing.
Oh.
How can you go from 20k views, right, to 2k views when you talk about exactly the same stuff? It just doesn't happen. Something.
Well, there was different, early on there was different people that were throwing stuff out to their pages. Seemed like we were getting more reach, via other people, that have come and gone. It seems to change depending on.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Since Facebook killed off accounts and that, we haven't been able to share as widely, and a lot of people have been.
Well, yeah, that was something that Jim was even talking about. Is that a lot of us, a lot of people are moving off of Facebook. He was actually saying that just even the internet in general. But you know, I've been saying this for a while. You know, Facebook is not the ideal place to be doing any kind of like it. Well, it's a great idea to put it out there for right now, but in the future, it's not going to be a safe place for activism because of.
No. It's already massively against activism.
Not only that, you know, they're moving more towards, you know, as you know, Smokey was talking that they're trying to open up marketplaces with vendors on Facebook. So not only would you be viewing,
Yeah.
you know, what your friends are doing, but you could also, you know, pick up a pizza. You know, shop around and buy books. You know, now you can through Facebook Messenger, you can get your Uber.
Facebook is done. I think.
Even Uber's having problems right now. I read. You know, they just fired one of their CEOs over some infighting in the corporation.
What do they give you? They give you like 15 years shelf life with social media app. Yeah, 15 years. The shelf life is normally around 15 years, and then it completely moves on to something else. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
So Facebook hasn't got much longer left, realistically, killing itself.
Well, realistically, Facebook can honestly probably stay out for a couple of years like this in shambles.
Yeah.
So.
But the attack it's doing is not benefiting it at all.
Well, they you know the original mission statement.
You know what I think, Tyler? I think that they don't give a fuck now. I think they made their money, and now that's why they're fucking taking the piss out activists and activism and anarchists, because they've made the money now. They've made billions, so they don't care now. They're just having a laugh now. They're just taking the piss.
Well, it's like the mainstream. Look at all the mainstream outlets. That's what they do. I mean, their audiences drop. They don't do. They just keep pumping out the propaganda. That's more or less what they're paid to do now.
Bro,
and they're okay with that. They don't. It's not about the readership or viewers and all that. Not like a real company.
Well, can you remember when Facebook started, and they were like letting you change your name whenever you wanted. You could do all the things that now you get. There's like they won't let you do it, will they? It's just insane. And when Facebook started as well, there was no all these like ads or rules. It was basically like what MeWe is now, isn't it, Tyler? Do you agree with that? MeWe is like what Facebook was when Facebook started out before it got rich.
Commercialized.
Yeah.
Well, that's like the cable model.
A lot better.
Cable started out that way. You're ad free. That's what you were paying for. That's what you were told anyway. And then slowly but surely, you got to the point now where you got like regular TV. It's mostly ads versus content.
There's an organization.
They're making a ton of cash.
Chris, do you remember you were asking me about Kodi, and you were saying for me to research and find out what's going on? Well, there's actually an organization now called ACE, ACE, and they're going to stop Kodi. It's Amazon, I think, and it's all the massive corporations with media, and they're coming together to form ACE, which will be for add-ons that are paid instead of free.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
they don't.
They're trying to completely stop it.
Yeah, even though the open streaming has been what do you call that? It's been legalized essentially. There's nothing they can do about it. People that are streaming free, but they're doing everything they can. These other companies are doing everything they can to shut that down, even though it's legal.
Guys, I'm going to have to stop talking for a bit, so I'm going to listen to you guys. But I think Quentin's here as well. So, Quint, you got anything to talk about, bro?
Not really. I don't know. Have you guys talked about the thing that happened with was it the personal details of, I think it was like 62% of the U.S. population was exposed. Did you guys see anything about that?
No, you threw it in the chat. I was still at work, but just elaborate a little bit more about that.
I don't know if that was I want to say that came out of the Republican Party, but I'm not for sure on that. But anyway, it's just a huge database of essentially dossiers of people, but pretty in depth. Their political affiliations, things they believe in, likes and shares, internet activity, Facebook. I mean, somehow whoever put this together had access to a lot of data, and apparently they got a lot of data on a lot of folks. But yeah, that's fresh out.
Fresh out the box.
Yeah, I think it is a couple days ago, and yeah, I read that today. I was like, wow, that's pretty bad. A lot of information. It says is 62% of the entire U.S. population, and it was all on. Let's see if I can find it here. It was uploaded to a server owned by Deeproot Analytics, and it is just tons of information on people, the addresses, phone numbers, political views on like gun control and stuff like that. Is pretty deep stuff.
Quinton, I can't really talk much now, but I was going to ask one question before I'm going to go. Can you explain what the fuck has happened with our reach? Why has it dropped so much when we've got exactly the same audience? We've been bringing on guests. We've been talking about some really good subjects. I can't understand how it could go from 20k views to 2k views. I mean, we're being censored, right?
There could be a lot of different things that it could be. It's just Facebook, stuff drops, goes up. You never really know. That's why you need to find a stable platform with stuff like this, that they just have a lot of stuff that they filter it through. And it might just be catching on to something.
Yeah, I
as you're
think
saying,
YouTube
like
Live
spam or something like that.
I think YouTube Live is a much better option than this. I think from what
Not only that, they can pick and choose what's trending, and I also think they can turn the off and on switch on the announcements on when you go live. I don't think the reach is going out all the way. So there's probably a lot of
Kyle, me and Mark have got big YouTube channels with Anonymous now, and we can put the show through that. And I'm talking 168k subs on one of our channels. So I'll talk to Mark tomorrow because we can't keep doing this. This is a waste of time. But we could probably plug through our YouTube and start streaming that way. Do you think you could do that? Do you reckon you could stream through YouTube? It's the same principle, isn't it, as Facebook? I mean, you just need the key, right?
Yeah, that's all I would need is probably just the password, and that's about it. Email and password. That's all I need.
Yeah.
I think we got a question here.
Go on.
Wait, hold on. Let me see. Where Planet X? Oh, hold on.
There was another one that came out. I was going to ask you exactly what this GitHub was. Something about the NSA put out 32 NSA exploits and loaded them onto GitHub. And that was kind of the title of the story. I didn't dig into it too big, but I was just like, well, that's weird. What, I heard some of you guys are on GitHub, and I'm not even sure what that is, but why they would be putting this out on that platform. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, man.
Sorry, say that again. I was watching. I was here's something in the background. What's going on?
NSA. There was, I think it was off the Hacker News. There was NSA has put 32 exploits, NSA exploits, and loaded them onto GitHub as like open source. Does that make any sense? Like, why the hell would they do that? Well, unless they're trying to trick you and honeypot you, and
Is it doing malicious things on the internet, or watching you while you're doing malicious stuff on the internet? Yeah. For sure.
It was a strange tactic. Obviously, some they've already gotten busted on or something, so they don't need it anymore. So they put it out for the masses.
That's why I see. Just like you were saying, like I've said it several times, is that our own government is doing creepy shit. Like the CIA is always like the creepy kid that's always doing some fucking weird shit. And then you look into it, there really is some truth to all of it. Whether it be infiltration to weird psyops to bringing in drugs into the U.S. Selling them on the street, all sorts of fucking weird shit,
Yeah, just the fact that they're turning the internet into what they've turned the mainstream media into. You see it with all this censorship and who, is essentially a pay-to-play program coming on and so forth. It's like they're turning the internet into the same kind of crap, and there has to be this exodus to these other platforms and some other system, because they are really jacking this system up. And
yeah,
well, it's true, but the protocols that are underlying means of how the internet, most of the protocols that are up to date, especially IP version 4, was created by our own government. Along with Tor. Tor was created by U.S. Navy, and IP version 4 was created by the Defense Aerospace Research Project Administration.
Yeah.
So
that's creepy.
Yeah,
I think the original wasn't wired. It wasn't wired communication. It was wireless communication to do IP version 4 packets. So. But
the same thing that's happened. It was already built in. It's kind of my condition. Like the chips and the platform, everything's been essentially infiltrated and subverted. Like from the beginning, you're seeing that now. The fact that of what they do, going after encryption, all these ways trying to shut you down, getting the word out. It's happening on every level. It's not just the internet; it's the chips, and then the chips that are put into other commercial products.
If your chips, even if you're using encryption, your internet service provider is relaying the data, or going through it and filtering it and sending it to the proper authorities. Nothing's really secure anymore.
Right. This goes back to like say Fourth Amendment, your right to privacies, and securing in your things and in your personal effects. this, that's just all blown out of the water. We've gotten all this, it's for national security, blah blah, all this tech, and it's just none of it secures you. You have no privacy.
Essentially, no, not unless you're using. I've looked into closed networks that are wireless. Somewhat, you could do that, but other than a small scale, it's slim pickings, bro.
Hey guys, I just spoke to Mark, and he said to put that documentary on I made, Kyle.
Okay.
And we just let the audience watch that.
Okay. All right. I
Yeah,
guess
it's
let
not-
me.
I think that's what he means. The Barrett documentary.
All right. Let me go to end the show. Hold on. And we will. Let me try and end it. Oh, you greedy little stupid program. It's just loading and it's crashing. Hold on. Oh, there we go. Don't crash on me. It's just loading. It's stuck in a loading circle. Oh, there we go. All right, and we will end the show in. Hold on. 3, 2, 1. Goodbye, guys.
So long.
Goodbye, guys.